is taken up with the state of the world, and how much are you distracted from the enormous thoughts that we began this interview discussing?
It's a good question, and I myself struggle with that. I think that I am first of all a human being and a citizen of this planet, and then a scientist, and not vice versa. I love when I can shut the door and take my notebook and start writing equations, but I think we all have a responsibility toward humankind that trying to give our little drop to avoid the disasters of the past.
Carlo Rovelli, we must end there. I thank you very much for being on Hard Talk. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That was Hard Talk. I'm Saroja Coelho. You're listening to CBC Radio 1. Have a great day.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. Welcome to Friday morning. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team here at the show. Minus 14 degrees in Winnipeg right now, and for the day we'll be right around minus 11 with a wind chill at minus 23. Very similar to what we've had for the last couple of days. Just some light snow this morning and no warnings to speak of. I always like to start the show with the weather, get you around the province. Brandon, you're going to be cloudy, little light snow, minus 14 for you as well today. And in Thompson, increasing cloud and a high of minus 17, but a 60% chance you're going to see some further snow up in Thompson. So thanks for joining us. The morning show's on until 8:37. If you have any issues out there on your commute, 788-3093. May McKillop's going to pick up the phone. May is covering the commute and directing the show this morning. Morning, May. Good morning to our control room otherwise. Sitting in there, Mr. Abby Adiyemi behind the controls. Abby also covers weather on the air. And good morning to Kevin Nipatebo, who is our fantastic YouTube producer, giving you a hello right now. All right, let's go over to our newsroom for the fabulous Heather Wells. I'm obviously in a mood to compliment my colleagues this morning, and why not? There's a lot of news developing. Heather, where are you going to start?
Well, we're going to start with a speech that happened Wednesday in Winnipeg. A candidate to lead Manitoba's PC party joked he would let polar bears loose in downtown Winnipeg to reduce homelessness. A party member who heard that joke says and also volunteers at a homeless mission says it wasn't funny. We're going to hear more about that. As well, a Congolese Winnipegger worries about conflict raging in his home country. The United Nations estimates at least 2,800 people died during fighting in Goma last week. Paul Kambaja moved to Winnipeg in 2003 as an immigrant. He is a teacher here. He has friends and family who have been displaced and says food in Congo is being controlled by the rebels who use it to create starvation. So we'll hear more from him and other stories coming up at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
In the first hour of our program, showing your love with food, literally. We're going to hear from the manager of a long-running sausage maker and delicatessen locally about their Valentine's Day themed items, like heart-shaped sausages and heart-shaped pierogies. Sounds like tons of fun, so we'll have that for you. Also, in the first hour of the show, what is happening with the Liberal leadership race? 5 candidates in the running for leader of the country's next prime minister, effectively, and leader of the Liberals. So we'll get some analysis of where we're at with that. Right now, though, it's time for World Report.
Today on Q.
I'm Saroja Coelho, in for Tom Power, Canada's queen of R&B soul, Julie Black, back on tour after almost 17 years. She drops by the Q studio to chat with Tom Power about the moment Whitney Houston changed her life at the age of 7.
I believe the children are future.
Q. This morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Helen Mann. Some key Canadian players are gathering today in Toronto to chart a course for economic self-reliance. The Prime Minister is convening a summit of political, business and labour leaders. Their focus, making Canada less dependent on the United States. Janice McGregor is in our Parliamentary Bureau. Janice, what can a summit like this accomplish?
Helen, this 30-day reprieve to Trump's tariff threats meant the government didn't need to be launching a retaliatory offense this week, but it's also given it more time to bolster its defenses. Get serious about fundamental economic strategy issues that the Trudeau government's been criticized for letting slip. putting a couple hundred business, labor, and political leaders in a room with policy experts today for 4 hours, of course, won't fix everything. The government hopes, though, to be seen as facilitating some of the tough conversations that are required right now. Labor leader Lana Payne from Unifor is on the front lines of this, representing auto workers once again fearful of their jobs heading south, realizing they can't count on the free market.
You can't do that anymore. You have to absolutely put planning around what it is we do with our economy and how we can best build good, strong Canadian jobs.
Donald Trump frames economic prosperity as a national security issue. The upside of this is that it could focus Canadians to take a hard look at why they aren't more strategic about doing business with each other instead of relying so much on the Americans.
So the Prime Minister is bringing all of these stakeholders together, but he's not recalling Parliament.
That's right, and opposition parties believe some of these conversations should be taking place in the House of Commons. Well, much of what the government needs to do in the short term may not require legislation. There are border security measures, economic supports for workers and industries that would eventually require parliamentary approval. Conservatives have not backed off on their vow to force an election as soon as possible, but a caretaker government during an election period has even less ability to respond to Donald Trump than a prorogued parliament.
Janice, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Janice McGregor in Ottawa. The largest U.S. government workers union is taking the Trump administration to court. They're wanting to reverse the president's dismantling of USAID. The aid agency helps millions of people around the globe. In addition to the humanitarian consequences, critics say it's also a big blow to U.S. foreign policy. Samantha Power is a former U.S. ambassador to the UN and a former head of USAID.
This is devastating, and it is ceding the field as well to the People's Republic of China, to the Russian Federation and other malign actors who would like nothing more than to see the U.S. ground game in American foreign policy, the face of American values, disappear like this.
Since returning to the Oval Office, Donald Trump has suspended all foreign aid and is moving to cut the USAID jobs from 10,000 to just under 300. The International Criminal Court is promising it will continue to pursue justice, even though President Donald Trump has just ordered sanctions against staff who work there. Trump signed the executive order late yesterday and accused the ICC of targeting the United States and its close ally, Israel. For more, let's go to our correspondent, Sasha Petrusik in Jerusalem. Sasha, what is the reaction to these sanctions?
Well, Trump's accusing the International Criminal Court of illegitimate and baseless actions targeting the U.S. and its close ally Israel, in his words. All of this would place financial and visa restrictions on various people at the court. They have not been named. The court said this is unacceptable, also says that it would continue providing hope and justice to millions of innocent victims of atrocities. Those are its words. And of course, it comes on the heels of the U.S. and Israel pulling out of a couple of other UN agencies. Yesterday, the UN Human Rights Council, and before that, UNRWA, the main agency that helps Palestinian refugees.
Meanwhile, Trump is still pushing ahead with his proposal to take over Gaza.
Yeah, here too, we're seeing a remarkable confluence of policies and interests between Israel and the United States. Israeli politicians have embraced the Trump deal, and even as much of the rest of the world has condemned it as unfair to Palestinians and unworkable. And of course, there's strong resistance in Gaza, but Trump and his officials are continuing. Yesterday, Trump himself doubled down on that proposal, without actually answering some key questions like whether Palestinians would be allowed to go back to Gaza after they were removed under his plan. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio saying that there's a lot of countries in the world that like to criticize the U.S. and express concern about Palestinian people, but very few have stepped up to do anything concrete about it. Really a challenge to anyone else to come up with a better idea. He himself did not answer that key question about whether Palestinians would be allowed to go back. He kind of avoided it.
Sasha, thank you.
My pleasure.
The CBC's Sasha Petrusik in Jerusalem. An Ontario retirement home and some of its staff are being charged with criminal negligence causing death. It relates to a 79-year-old resident who died 2 years ago in Oshawa, just east of Toronto. The woman was found outside the home on a cold night. As Philip Lee Shannock reports, it is rare for a retirement home to be charged criminally.
This is a horrific case of negligence.
Laura Tamblin-Watts is CEO of CanAge, a national advocacy group for seniors. She says the unidentified 79-year-old woman should not have died alone outside in the cold.
You can only imagine an older adult goes out of their own home, has a smoke, and can't get back in and dies. It's shameful. And it's horrifying.
Temperatures on April 1st, 2023 dipped to -3 Celsius. Durham Regional Police found her on a bench. She died of exposure to the elements. Police charged 2 employees in December. Now a 3rd worker and the home itself, Aspera Traditions of Durham Retirement Living, face charges of criminal negligence causing death. Graham Webb is a lawyer with the Advocacy Center for the Elderly.
It's the first time in nearly 40 years of practicing law that I've seen a charge of this type.
He says since the pandemic, elder safety has become a priority.
There's been a lot of attention paid to the rights and interests of retirement home residents and long-term care home residents.
The Retirement Homes Regulatory Authority oversees Ontario's retirement homes. It released a report last year suggesting staff did not respond appropriately to a stairwell alarm. The authority and Aspera did not comment on the charges. Philip Lee Shannock, CBC News, Toronto.
A library in Alberta is facing a pushback from parents who want some titles pulled from the shelves, specifically those with themes on sex education and gender identity. Such book challenges are on the rise in Canada. An investigation by the Fifth Estate reveals a shadow war on libraries. Mark Kelly has more.
It's called Pride Festivals, and it just teaches kids about Pride Festival. And
librarian Kelly Lawson pulls a book from a shelf at the Airdrie Public Library north of Calgary. It's being challenged by parents who want it removed.
So this one, along with quite a few other titles we've had, were found actually in our toilet in the women's washroom.
The Airdrie Library, like many others in Canada, finds itself caught in the crosshairs of a culture war. Under fire, books about sex education, gender identity, or titles with gay themes and characters. Lawson tracks book challenges for the Canadian Federation of Library Associations. In 2023, there were almost 200, up from 38, for example, in 2018.
Who here feels that horrible things are happening in our library?
David Parker is the founder of Take Back Alberta. It's one of many socially conservative groups who feel some library content is corrupting Canadian kids.
Right, they're introducing them to a sexual way of being. They're making sex primary. Children don't need that. Children need to be children.
Florence Ashley is a transgender associate professor of law at the University of Alberta.
It's really kind of a first step towards a broader redefinition of who is truly part of Canada.
As for those defaced books in Airdrie,
all these books that got thrown in the toilet, we reordered. So we'll bring them back for people.
Mark Kelly, CBC News, Airdrie, Alberta.
The Fifth Estate's full investigation airs tonight on CBC Television and CBC Gem at 9:30 in Newfoundland. Watch it on YouTube this afternoon at 1 p.m. Eastern. That is the latest from World Report. If you're trying to make staying informed a daily habit, you can follow World Report wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Helen Mann.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Friday. Thanks for joining us here on Information Radio. My name is Marcy Marcusa, here with our team at the show. And right now in Winnipeg, we're at -14. Really similar weather for our Friday here to what we had yesterday and really the day before as well. A little less snowy in parts of the province. Good morning, Heather. Heather Wells just popping in. We're going to hear from her in a moment with our headlines. And as soon as I said it wasn't snowy, what's Heather giving me? school cancellations. Some parts of the province where you have had snow, we do have some buses that are canceled, actually. So we'll give you that list in a moment. Stay tuned. Also, this hour on the program, showing your love with food. We're talking heart-shaped pierogies, and why not? We're a week to Valentine's Day. Plus, we're going to touch base with what's happening with the Liberal leadership leadership race. We're going to hear about where the candidates are at. And as you heard on World Report, the deadline is today to raise another block of funds to continue. So stay tuned for that. Right now, before I get into these changes in what's happening with bus cancellations, let's go back to Heather, this time in our news center with those headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, a member of the Progressive Conservative Party is questioning a joke by a candidate to lead Manitoba's PCs. Wally Dowdrich runs a Churchill ecotourism company, and during a speech this week, he joked he would let polar bears loose in downtown Winnipeg to reduce homelessness. Thomas Rempel-Ong volunteers at a mission for the homeless and says he saw that speech and did not find it funny. The party's leadership selection committee has declined comment. Manitoba has more people experiencing deep poverty than any other province. That's according to a new Stats Canada report. Families Minister Nahanni Fontaine says Manitoba's former PC government was in power at the time, but she says the NDP government has initiated programs like school nutrition and free birth control as ways to help reverse the cycle of poverty. We're going to hear more from her in our next local news coming up at 6:30.
All right, thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, why don't I read what Heather handed me here? Due to poor rural road conditions, Brandon School Division has canceled rural buses. In the city of Brandon, buses will run. So that's just the bus cancellation rurally. School is on. In Rolling River School Division, buses are canceled and colony schools are closed for the day. And those are the only two notes to this hour. This hour is 6:12. There's Abby Adiemi on our Friday. How you doing?
Good morning.
Morning.
How's the weather outside? Let me ask you that question.
Really exactly the same as yesterday. It's like deja vu.
Deja vu, but we just have some cloudy conditions this morning, though. We will see a mix of sun and clouds, some light snow in some parts of the southern regions, like Brandon already seeing light snow this morning. While up north, we're going to experience more like beta wind chills for Thompson and Churchill. Looking at conditions around Winnipeg and surrounding areas, temperatures around -14 at this time. Yes, some clouds spotted up there. There's a very slim chance of light snow this morning. Then we'll see a mix of sun and clouds. The winds will be picking up from the northwest, becoming breezy around the noon period. Highs around -11, but the wind chill this morning feels like -23, so the cold is still sticking with us. And then if you look across the province, this cold mix of sun and clouds will be in play in most of the regions down south, but in the northern regions, we should be seeing more like some snow there. And temperatures will be more around -11 for most of the regions today, which is sea highs around -11, but the wind chill is something that will be in play for most of the regions. Winnipeg, expect a mix of sun and clouds. As mentioned, very slim chance of snow in the forecast today.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Gonna be a good night to curl. I've got my curling sweatshirt on. Here, I'll lean into the shot, move my hair. It's got that curling show on it. Which is Devin Haru, who loves curling. He's so fun. And Colleen Jones. But we have our CBC team that's going to be out on the ice in the Red River for the Ironman curling bonspiel tonight, May.
That looks like the coziest hoodie.
Right?
It looks so comfy.
Yeah. So that's what I've got going for me, because my curling moves will not be as nice as my hoodie. I haven't curled. Oh my gosh. I think I threw an actual curling rock for a story, like when I was hosting a TV show years ago. And then before that, like when I was younger, I jam pail curled, because I went to Donwood School in North Kildonan, and that is where Jill Officer went. So Jill is famous for being on Jennifer Jones' Olympic-winning, obviously, rink, and on her team for many years. So in that school, curling was sort of, like, it was like, oh, okay. Yeah.
I have a question. In baseball, they always bring like one person from the audience to come do the first throw and all of that. Can I do that for the opening of this event?
Yes.
Just do the first toss. I don't need to score any points.
If you're coming down there to the Red Boyne Club on Churchill Drive tonight, 6 o'clock is first rock, and I'll give it to you, because I'm opening the thing with Jim Agapito from CBC.
I'll be there.
I want to be there just
I might hold you to that. Yeah, right? All right, let's get into the commute this morning with May.
No calls so far, but just noting where the Rolling River School Division, you said, is some buses aren't running today. So I'm looking in that area in particular, Highway number 10 up through Riding Mountain National Park area. We have partly snow-covered conditions conditions and some reduced visibility with blowing winds, blowing some of that snow around. As well, I'm seeing the further southeast you go, heading out of Winnipeg, you're probably going to encounter some reduced visibility, particularly through the Manitou, Killarney, Turtle Mountain area. The further south you get, the less visibility you have. I'm seeing that on 511 Manitoba highways. You can check there for highway conditions. I will be updating them throughout the show today. Anything getting in the way of your commute, give us a call and let me know. 204-788-3093.
Well, a Winnipeg-based deli wants to show your love with food. Sausage Makers Meat Market and Delicatessen has all sorts of things to help you with your Valentine's Day and evening plans to do that. Daria Zozulia is the store manager. Now, she joined Faith Fundell yesterday here in the studio for the afternoon show, and she brought a couple of treats.
So today I brought garlic sausage made out of the shape of the heart. It's made here locally in Winnipeg, 630 Nairn Avenue. We make it in our kitchen and smoke in our warehouse. And it's gluten-free and basically meat and spices there.
And you're pretty much sticking to the heart-shaped theme there. You also have pierogies as well?
Yes. Beside them, I have pierogies also made here locally in Manitoba from Cook Creek. It's from Cravens. They're gluten-free in the shape of pierogies. And to make them pink, they add beet juice.
Okay, I see. I mean, when I look at that, it looks kind of similar to what I might see. I imagine it's a little bit different when you're making it. How hard is it what kind of effort do you have to do to shape something in that
It's
in that
pretty
shape?
tricky, but anyway, we tie the casing. So when we're doing that, we just make a little bit different shape and have a little bit extra knots. And yeah, some secret there, but here it is.
It looks like a heart for sure.
It is.
And then when you look at the pierogies, is that harder as well to do, or is it a shaper that you have?
They use the shape and coloring, as I mentioned, beet juice, and as a shape and all handmade, kind of a little bit extra work.
What's the thinking behind why you wanted to make heart-shaped things?
We started a couple years ago, and people seems to like it. And during the winter time, especially, we need some joy. So when you look at it, and you feel like, oh, that's so cute, and kind of bring you some joy and, of course, love.
And that's part of the reason why you're here, because some folks showed the heart-shaped things that you had, and we thought, this is something that people seem to be craving. What are you hearing from people when they come in, and especially this time of year when they see, okay, there's the heart-shaped sausage that they know is made here? And
sure, it's a high demand for them, but take orders. People are buying 2 or 3 at a time for their friends, for their just visitors. And they really like it. The feedback is really great.
Do they ask for them?
Oh, yeah. We also do numbers, shape of numbers.
No kidding.
Yeah, for like anniversaries or birthday parties, like 80 or 15 or, 25, 75. People love those. And it's something neat. Nowadays, it's hard to find perfect gift, and food is always the best, you know? Everybody eats.
Everybody does eat. Does it cost more when you ask for something like that?
A little bit, not super much, but just a little bit. For a few extra dollars, I would say, just for labor to cover all those extra time.
We've been seeing a lot of focus on buying local lately. What have you noticed from people? Have they been asking you about where things have come from?
Absolutely, especially on the Facebook, and in the store as well. We are very proud local store, of course, and
60
all the
years,
meat.
Right?
Oh yeah, more than 65. Last year was 65. So all our meat comes from Manitoba, pork and beef. We also, of course, bring some product overseas, but it's basically Ukraine and European countries. We try to help. Of course, we hired lots of Ukrainians, and so we have lots of now new customers, Ukrainians, which we bring their product. And I also brought some tea box in the shape of a heart. That's also from Ukraine. Yeah. But of course, people asking for local product, and we have honey and pasta and quite a selection, and of course bread and honey and jam,
all sorts of things essentially.
Yeah, lots of local.
And when you're looking to source these items, I mean, are you seeking out local producers or local folks, or do they just come to you?
Yeah, honestly, we'll have them even before all this news, and we just like to support our local businesses, because we are also a small local business. And some people ask if we can sell their product, and then they bring their product, and then we see how we can fit in our store. And this is how it starts.
What's your sense of why you've continued to have this kind of success? That you continue to have people coming every year and saying, hey, can you make me another heart-shaped sausage? Thanks, I'll pay the extra.
Well, first of all, the quality. The quality is really great. It doesn't matter what shape it is, because nowadays everybody is trying to seek healthy food. And this is basically meat and spices, how I mentioned, and not natural casing and gluten-free product. So first they come for quality, and then shape is just something like extra bonus that we can treat them with, kind of.
I mean, are heart-shaped sausages and pierogies romantic, do you think?
Why not?
So that is CBC's Faith Fundel in conversation with the guest, the store manager of Sausage Makers Meat Market and Delicatessen. It's on Nairn. That is Daria Zazulia, And now they're having their Valentine's Day themed sausages and pierogies. So much fun. And you can order them now. Next Friday, of course, is February 14th, Valentine's Day. Well, let's keep talking about food here on CBC at 6:21 a.m., but this time freezer food. In this time of economic uncertainty, freeing up some extra cash might not be a bad idea. Many of us have one form of currency in the house that we're not even aware of, and it might give new meaning to the idea of cold, hard cash. Stay with us here to explain. Here's Jennifer Keane.
Lindsay Harrington likes to stock up on food when it's on sale and toss it in the deep freeze. But she used to lose track of what was in there.
I found that, my freezer was just full of things that I never got around to eating, whether I was saving them for special occasions or I just forgot about some random block of soup.
So a couple of years ago, she challenged herself. What if she bought no groceries for the month of January and just ate what was in the freezer and pantry?
I do like to have cream or milk in my coffee, but Newfoundlanders love canned milk, like carnation milk. So I do have a couple of cans of that kind of on the side.
She calls it No Grow, No Groceries, January. She's doing it again this year, and she says it's not as hard as you think. In fact, the first week is usually pretty easy.
I still have all of my Christmas stocking chocolate and lots of goodies left over from the holidays, those frozen appetizers that everybody stocks up on.
But by the middle of the month, the fresh fruit and veggies are gone. And by week 4, things get weird.
I remember one year I was like, oh my God, what can I even make? And I was looking, and I ended up making a soup out of just cans of V8 and navy beans. And I was like, I guess this is my life.
If you do a quick Google search, you'll find all kinds of people doing this.
But we're going to start by showing what I've got on top, and then we'll get into...
Some call it the pantry challenge or the extreme freezer clean out.
I've got some stir-fried vegetables.
And there's a reason people are finding ways to make their food bill go further.
Food prices have been top of mind for a lot of households, especially in the past few years.
Amanda Norris is a senior economist with Farm Credit Canada.
Since 2020, we saw food inflation increase about 24%. And when we break it down by food category, things like meat products and bakery and cereal over those 5 years experienced a larger increase.
One way to cut down on costs is to cut down on waste. We throw out a lot. Paul Vanderwerf, an adjunct professor at the University of Western Ontario, conducted a study of 200 Canadian homes. For weeks, his team rummaged through their garbage.
It's not super glorious work, but it does provide interesting and real sort of evidence-based data.
Every week, he found the average household tossed about 3 kilos of food. And that's money down the drain.
When we look at it from a dollar perspective, The work that I did fairly conservatively suggested that about $700 a year was wasted. Others have estimated that it's $1,800 a year. So somewhere, $700 to $1,800, so like at least $1,000 a year is just wasted.
Lindsay Harrington says cleaning out the pantry once a year means she saves hundreds of dollars, and she doesn't waste food. But when it comes to the deep, dark corners of her deep freeze, even Lindsay has her limits.
Some things I just never know what they are. Like, I didn't label them before I put them in the freezer, and I'm like, I don't know what this is. So, and even when you thaw it out, I'm like, I still don't know what this is. I'm not that adventurous an eater, so I don't eat those.
For the cost of living, I'm Jennifer Keane.
I love that when she thought it out, she still didn't know what it was, Abby. That's the best.
Yeah, it sounds like me. Like if there's one section of the grocery store that I never visit is where you have the sweet stuff. Marcy, I have sugar from before the pandemic still in my kitchen.
Do you really?
It's rock solid now.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Like I only opened the bag maybe once and I can't remember the last time I visited that.
I can't remember how you soften it. There's something about throwing citrus maybe into sugar. Some listener was going to call, I hope, or one of the listeners I hope will call. But I know that's brown sugar. I don't know if it works with white sugar. But what do you have in your freezer that you're proud of that you're going to reuse still?
My freezer from last summer, I have fresh tomatoes that I blended myself. Ooh. And it's still frozen. Like I have like parts of them in little containers and they're just there in the freezer. Yeah. And I don't think I've bought tomato paste in a while.
Love that.
Because I just reach for it, grab, and make my meal.
It changes your life once you really do that freezer clean out, right? And you find those things. I was so proud of myself. I started doing there's only enough left for one person, but I'm going to freeze it anyway. And then sometimes, it's myself and John Paul in the house. So sometimes I'll be like, oh, look, there's 2 one-person meals in here and I don't have to cook. I've saved money. And you feel like you kind of feel like proud of yourself. And then you have this lift where you kind of feel like you made money, right? Like they said.
And I'm still thinking of cleaning up because I know there's something in a jar I did not label. So I don't know what it is.
You'll have to tell us next week.
I don't know if it's it looks like cucumber, but I'm not sure. It's like liquidy. I'm not opening it yet.
Let's take calls. What's the oldest thing in your freezer? And maybe what are you most proud about? If you have habits where you've remade something or gotten a habit of freezing something, or maybe you've been doing that for years. 788-3205 feels like a Friday question. Here's a bit of music to get us to the news. We've got Kelly Batto this morning. This tune's called Belém.
Ma vie dormait dans l'ennui, la solitude et la nuit, et j'ai vu ta lumière. Nous n'étions pas amis, toi ailleurs et moi ici, mais tu fais la différence, j'avance. J'étais sûre que dans ce monde, personne ne se souciait de personne. Mais tu n'es pas comme ces gens qui t'ignorent et qui t'abandonnent. Tu me donnes de ta flamme. Les belles âmes font de belles âmes. À New York ou Barcelone, partout la vie nous assomme. Mais dans ce monde de fous, l'amour est toujours en nous. On dévoile sa bienveillance quand on ressent la souffrance. Ça devient l'évidence, une chance. Les héros ne se ressemblent pas et sont souvent invisibles. Tu fais partie de cela, tu rends possible l'impossible.
I love Kelly Batto's voice. It's so pretty. I had the opportunity to hear her sing live here at CBC in studio because she joined us for a fundraiser one year. And Amazing. If you want to see her in person, this is her with Belém. She's going to be playing Festival on February 16th. It's coming up fast. Right now, your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, it's minus 14, a high today of minus 11. Not quite seasonal, but close. The normal high this time of year is minus 9. A candidate to lead Manitoba's Progressive Conservatives joked during a speech he would let polar bears loose in downtown Winnipeg as a way to reduce homelessness. A party member who heard that joke and volunteers at a homeless mission says it isn't funny. CBC's Bartley Kivas reports.
I always say where I come from in Churchill, we don't have any homeless people. Anybody take a guess one?
That's Wally Dowdrich, a Churchill ecotourism operator who's running for PC leader, speaking at an event in Winnipeg on Wednesday night.
When there's serious repercussions for a bad lifestyle, people smarten up very quickly. So my plan is to import 10 polar bears, then let them go in front of the ledge.
Dowdrich says he was clearly joking. He says he knows homeless people suffer from addictions. Thomas Rempel-Ong, a PC member who volunteers in the kitchen at Silo Mission, says he heard the joke and wishes people thought before they spoke.
I don't know anyone who possibly thinks that that's funny, because you're basically joking that homeless people can be bear food.
Dowdrich is running for PC leader against MLA Abi Khan. The party plans to name a new leader on April 26th. Bartley Kivas, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Manitoba's Families Minister says the government's working to raise the prospects for people who live in deep poverty. A new Statistics Canada report says Nova Scotia had Canada's highest rate of poverty in 2022. Manitoba wasn't far behind. This province leads the nation, though, in what Stats Can calls deep poverty. That's where people reach less than 75% of the basic standard of living. Nahani Fontaine says Manitoba's demographics played a role.
There is a racialized poverty as well. And so we do have a significant Indigenous population and a significant newcomer population that are facing additional barriers. Tragically, the result is just being further entrenched in poverty.
Fontaine points to things like the school nutrition program and free birth control as initiatives the government hopes will help to reverse the cycle of poverty. Well, a Canadian economic summit is being held today in Toronto.
We talk about interprovincial trade. It's very difficult, even if your product is made in Canada, to get it from British Columbia to Ontario.
Wes Hall, a member of the Prime Minister's Council on Canada-U.S. Relations, he'll be at the table today along with the Prime Minister and dozens of representatives from Canadian business and Canadian labor. It's a summit born out of the lingering U.S. tariff threats, and its main goal, among a number of priorities, is to look at opening up Canadian markets for Canadian manufacturers concerned about the future of trade with the United States. A Manitoba-based humanitarian organization knows it could soon be facing greater demands as the Trump administration takes steps to defund the world's biggest provider of international aid. USAID distributes tens of billions of dollars a year in upwards of 100 countries. The Mennonite Central Committee doesn't get USAID funding, but its disaster response coordinator, Bruce Gunther, says it works with many groups that do.
We're hearing from our partner organizations that those large funding operations are being shut down, and so that means there's going to be a huge gap that needs to be filled, and then that will mean more requests coming to us that we'll need to consider how we respond to those.
Gunther says there has never been a greater need for people to donate to groups like MCC as they work together to help fill some of the gaps created by the demise of USAID. You can hear the latest national and international news coming up on World Report at 7. Fire crews are forced to use buckets to put out fires at Tatasqueyac Cree Nation. The fire chief there says large parts of the town don't have running water for fire hydrants. Some in the community think the problem lies with the local band council. Douglas Kitchakisik is the community's fire chief.
Oh, they haven't had meetings yet. Been neglecting to have inform the people of their meeting, their plans, and whatever they plan, And people are frustrated because of that. They're neglecting to inform people. Yeah, the not having band meetings.
Chief Doreen Spence says band meetings have been canceled because of deaths in the community. She says the community is working with the federal government to build and secure funding for new water infrastructure. A Congolese Winnipegger worries about conflict raging in his home country. The United Nations estimates at least 2,800 people died during fighting in Goma last week. Rwanda-backed M23 rebels captured the city in a major escalation of a decade-long conflict. Paul Kambaja moved to Winnipeg in 2003 as an immigrant and is a teacher here. He says he has many friends and family who have been displaced.
I'm feeling very sad. We are like every Congolese. The war in Congo has been going on for over 30 years with a lot of loss, people dying over 6 or 10 millions and a lot of women, displacement.
Kambaja says the food is being controlled by the rebels who use it to create starvation. You can find more on these stories as well as other news throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right. Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, we do have some issues with the weather that's affecting school division buses. So because of poor rural road conditions, Brandon School Division isn't operating rural buses. And in Rolling River School Division, buses are canceled entirely and colony schools are also closed for the day. Let's get into our regional forecast now on CBC with Abby Adiemi.
Good morning once again. We're looking at mild like a repetition of yesterday's weather in the Winnipeg area, but not with the snow included. We just have that slight chance of snow in the forecast today. Starting with cloudy conditions today, we're aiming for a high of -11 for Winnipeg and surrounding area. At this time, temperatures around -14. In the Pembina Valley region, we're seeing similar conditions also to Winnipeg. Temperatures also around -16, aiming for a high of -11. In Brandon, -17 at this time. We're seeing snow falling in that part of the province. The Westman should expect a mix of sun and clouds later in the day. We're going to see highs close to -14. The wind chills make it feel even colder, around -29 at this time. In Dauphin, -14 and cloudy start to the day there. That should be followed by a mix of sun and clouds and a high. The temperature is just going to stay around -14 most of the day. And we'll see the wind chills around -25, -35 for that part of the province. In Gimli, -13 at this time. Cloudy conditions you're seeing. There's a very slim chance of light snow this morning for folks in that part of the province. That should be followed by a mix of sun and clouds. Expect some breezy conditions from the northwest. Highs will be around -11. In the Par and Flin Flon, temperatures at -20 at this time. You're seeing clear conditions. It will feel colder though, with the wind chill factored in, reaching -30 this morning. However, expect a high of -16 today. In Thompson, we do have light snow in that part of the northern part of Manitoba. -17 will be the high for the day, but the wind chills makes it feel like -33 this morning. And then looking at conditions in the further north in Churchill, -22 with ice crystals in the air. The high for today, -18, though the wind chill makes it feel like it's -35 this morning, so take care. In summary, Winnipeg, we're aiming for a high of -11, and that's what it looks like in most of the southern regions today.
All right. Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Now let's get into what's happening in our commute overall. May McKillop has those details.
Hey, good morning. No major calls on the commuter line so far, but I did get a message from someone traveling on Highway number 6 from Perimeter to Woodlands area saying that the conditions were clear, but the overpasses and intersections were snowy and slippery, so watch for that. As well, heading on some of the highway conditions heading outside of Winnipeg, particularly southeast, we're seeing some blurry conditions and reduced visibility because of blowing snow on those highways, particularly through Bois Vane area, and then if you're heading north through Brandon. And along Highway number 10, we're seeing some blowing, partly covered conditions and blowing snow, reduced visibility because of that, along with highways east of Highway number 10, where we are seeing some closures on buses today. Anything else that you're seeing along the commute that's getting in your way, give me a call and I will pass that message along to fellow commuters. The number to call is 204-788-3093.
All right. Thanks, May.
You're welcome.
May McKillop covering our commute this morning. Crystal Lee Ramlakan joins us with business news. Good morning, Crystal Lee.
Hey, good morning, Marcy.
You know what I just realized? So you and I talk on Zoom every morning, right? So people who are watching the show on Zoom can usually see what coffee mug I have. And I've completely outed myself today because in our newsroom, we have coffee mugs that are for the guests. So they're there, and then you're supposed to clean them, and then you put them back for the guests. But I have been like so lazy, and like I'll just been like running late, and then I'll grab a mug, and I've been using the guest mugs, and I don't even think there's any more out there. They're all like on my desk. And now
a whole
everyone
pile
knows.
of them on your desk.
Yeah,
Dirty cups on your desk.
I don't know who else out there has some bad office habits, but I've outed myself. There it is. All my coworkers are gonna be like, "Is that the guest mug she's drinking from?" All right, let's talk about business news. You're actually starting today with the cost of housing in a news story. What are you seeing?
Yeah, so average asking rents across Canada actually hit a 18-month low last month. So they declined 4.4% on an annual basis to an average of $2,100 a month. So the report from Urban Nation and Rentals.ca analyzes listings in its network. And this marks the fourth straight month of rent declines after 38 increases in a row. So much of the decline has been concentrated in the secondary rental market, where asking rents for condo apartments, houses, and townhomes fell. But despite the decline, average rents are still just over 5% higher than 2 years ago and 16% higher than 3 years ago. Now, there in Winnipeg, the story is a little bit different. The average asking rent for apartments and condos actually went up 2% compared to last year to just over $1,600 a month. So for more on this, here's Giacomo Lattis, who is with Rentals.ca.
It's still expensive. And what we're seeing as well is what's happening with some of Canada's major cities. What we're really seeing too is a leveling out of rents across the country where, consumer preferences have changed so much, where there's been such a deprioritization of living in downtown cores that, frankly, people are moving to other areas.
So Urban Nation says more rent declines are likely in the months ahead overall because of heightened economic risks, immigration target cuts, and more apartment builds finishing. And so Ontario recorded the steepest decline, with rents falling just over 5% to about $2,300. And the country's most expensive rental market of BC saw a 2.6% decrease to almost $2,500.
Businesses, let's move to another story here. Businesses are, of course, concerned about possible tariffs on Canadian goods going to the U.S., but there's also something else that's making them nervous right now.
Yes. So before the 30-day pause on possible tariffs, U.S. President Donald Trump's executive order also included the end of a shipping exemption. So it's known as the de minimis exemption, and it allows global businesses to ship packages valued at less than $800 to the U.S. without having to pay duties. And Canadian companies have long used the exemption when moving products across the border. But Trump's executive order scraps the de minimis loophole for shipments entering the U.S. from Canada. So another order has already ended the exemption for goods moving from China to the U.S. And Canadian companies say losing the exemption will inflict just as much damage as the 25% tariff that Trump has been promising. So businesses fear the move is going to come with big costs for customers if, these businesses pass on the costs that they're incurring, and also administrative nightmares.
I should mention that Information Radio at some point this month is going to be live, hopefully on a shop floor. We put a number of calls out to different manufacturers across Manitoba just to hear more about how, they're planning and positioning their concerns, as you've been outlining, so many of them. You have one more story before markets this morning. It's about Rogers. Rogers is being accused of deceptive marketing. How is the telecom responding to that?
Yeah, so Rogers Communications is pushing back against the Competition Bureau, which alleges false advertising around its unlimited data plans. So the Bureau says Rogers ads create the false or misleading impression that the plans provide limitless data, when in reality, data is severely limited once a data cap is reached. So data speeds are reduced by over 99% once a customer hits the cap. But Rogers notes that the vast majority of customers never hit their cap. So Rogers says the Bureau is unreasonably targeting the company for an advertising format that all other major telecom providers have also used. It also says the Bureau ignores widespread customer understanding of these kinds of plans. So the Bureau has filed an application with the Competition Tribunal to have Rogers stop the allegedly misleading advertising, pay a penalty, and issue restitution to Infinite Wireless phone plan customers.
What's going on with the numbers today?
So in Europe, markets are edging lower ahead of U.S. and Canada jobs data set to be released today. Germany is up, the UK is down, France is down. In Asia, markets are mixed. Japan is down, Shanghai and Hong Kong are both up. Oil is up 53 cents to 71.14 U.S. per barrel. Gold is up 10.80 to $2,866.20 U.S. per ounce. And the dollar is down 0.07 of a cent to 69.8 cents U.S.
We will talk to you on Monday. Thank you for the week.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Marcy.
That's Crystal Lee Ramlakan. She covers business news every morning here on Information Radio. Minus 14 in Winnipeg, mostly cloudy. Light snow falling in Brandon, minus 17, and Thompson with light snow as well, and minus 21. Brandon School Division not running rural buses today. That is because of poor rural road conditions. In Rolling River School Division, buses are also canceled, and Colony schools are closed for the day. If you need to update anything on the roadways this morning on your commute, 788-3093 is where you can reach May. Well, next on the show, here's something that I think we've all done. You go to the grocery store, you grab a rotisserie chicken, and then you walk out somehow with a bucket of ice cream and 2 bags of chips. Maybe because they were on sale and in front of you at the till, or you saw them when you walked in. Retailers know that getting us in the door is the first step to getting into your wallet. And as CBC Allison Dempster reports, they're finding more ways to lure us in.
When Bill Carr and his wife are looking for a cheap date night, they come here, to Costco.
We've been together 25 years, so, go out for a Costco dog and a pop. So it's a night out.
And they say romance is dead. The Costco hot dog deal has been around for 40 years. It's designed to get customers through the door, and the price after all that time, still $1.50.
Especially with the cost of food costs these days. Where else you're going to get something for $1.50? Though I just spent $350 in there, so like in 15 minutes.
When you think of your own consumer behavior, do you feel a bit manipulated, or are you kind of okay with the strategy?
Yeah, I know what's going on, and I'm cool with it, 100%. Yeah, just like I kind of know what's in the hot dog, but I'll eat it anyways, Same thing.
Costco customers have become attached to the hot dog deal. The company's co-founder was once asked what it would mean if the price ever went up. His answer? That I'm dead.
Have you heard that story?
I had not heard that story, but it makes a lot of sense. It's that everyone knows that the Costco hot dog is an incredibly good deal.
Jo Andrea Hogue studies consumer psychology at the University of British Columbia.
They could give it away for free. It's not the point, right? The money from the hot dog is absolutely irrelevant.
It's what's known as a loss leader. Costco takes a loss in order to lead customers to spend on other things.
No one is going to Costco just for the hot dog. It is just to get people into the store.
And once you're there, maybe you pick up 60 pairs of tube socks or a wheel of cheese. Hogue says loss leaders work in different ways. For instance, a razor might be sold for cheap, but then you have to buy the blades, which aren't. Same idea with printers and ink.
They're relatively inexpensive, but the cartridges are, and you have to buy them all the time, are extremely expensive, and you spend a fortune on that.
And you become a repeat customer. With online sales, the loss leader can be even more persuasive.
There's more room to influence the consumer online than there is in the store.
Andreas Boker teaches marketing and retail management at the University of Guelph. He says the big online retail chains are finding new ways to use loss leaders to pull consumers in.
If a customer is, for example, searching for something, they respond to a loss leader advertising online, then that gives the retailer the opportunity to bring other products to the customer's attention.
Retailers are collecting data on consumer habits and using artificial intelligence to personalize recommendations.
And that can entice the customer then to say, oh yeah, that's a nice product. And even though it's a little bit more pricey, but I saved some money with a loss leader, I can now afford to buy this pricier product.
A good deal can be hard to resist. If you're trying to stay disciplined, it might help to keep in mind who the loss leader was invented to serve. The retailer. But Jo Andrea Hogue says even the experts falter sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely fall for the grocery store one all the time. I go in to just buy one thing, and I always just bring one grocery bag, and I end up needing 3. So yes, I fall for that all the time. 'Cause I actually enjoy wandering through the grocery stores. You'd think I would know better, but I do not.
Okay, well, that makes me feel better.
For The Cost of Living, I'm Allison Dempster in Calgary.
It happens, right? You can catch The Cost of Living on their podcast, or you can catch it on CBC Radio 1 on noon. And that is the cost of being a Liberal leadership candidate. There's a deadline today, as you may have heard on World Report, that means that candidates who want to keep in the race have to meet a certain threshold for what they're fundraising. We're just over a month until the federal Liberals choose their next leader. 5 candidates are still in the running to replace Justin Trudeau March 9th. And let's talk more about that. Alex Ballingal is with us this morning. Ballingal, he's the Deputy Audit Bureau Chief for the Toronto Star. Good morning.
Hey, good morning.
So candidates have to pay, as I was kind of bumbling through, but articulating there a bit, the third installment today. That's the language that we should use here. It's $125,000 towards the overall $325 fee to stay in the race. So who's met the bar? And then what are you thinking that, it's going to look like by the end of today?
Well, that's a huge question today that we're obviously watching for, like who's going to clear this hurdle. Yesterday, Karina Gould, the former House leader, was asked about it. And she was quite critical of the threshold, basically saying that the parties aggressively set an aggressive target, that it's going to limit the debate. So it'll be interesting to see whether she clears the hurdle. I know her campaign had sent an email earlier this week talking about how they needed another $100,000, or they wanted another $100,000. So it's unclear exactly what will happen there, but that's something to watch for. From what we understand, my colleague Ryan had been asking about this earlier this week. The Carney campaign has the money and the Freeland campaign has the money. Frank Baylis, another candidate, a former MP from Quebec, has said yesterday that he's going to meet the goal. And then there's also the 5th candidate, Ruby Dalla, a former MP from kind of the Toronto area. So we'll see what happens with her. But yeah, I mean, it is the overall entry fee is more than the leadership race that the Conservatives had that Pierre Poilievre won. It's a shorter leadership race as well. So to raise that money in a matter of weeks, we'll see who can do it. And it's definitely something that, our bureau and all the political reporters are definitely watching for today.
How are candidates distinguishing themselves?
There's been, with policy announcements, this week there was kind of an argument over, maybe not an argument, but almost like a contest over defense spending. The current government says they'll meet their NATO target that Canada's basically been really slow to hit. The Trudeau government's saying they'll hit it in 2032. Mark Carney came out and said he would do it by 2030. Frank Baylis has said by 2030. And Chrystia Freeland came out and said actually she could do it by 2027. Karina Gould said that. So there's kind of like policy differences like that. But on the carbon price, Carney said he would scrap it. Chrystia Freeland said she would scrap it. Karina Gould would freeze it. So there's sort of kind of like slight differences in policy around stuff like that. But, all of them are also really trying to say that they would be best placed to take on Trump. They would be best placed to shore up the Canadian economy and make it less vulnerable to, the unpredictable nature of the U.S. right now. So that is also a major theme in the race.
Let's talk about the unpredictable nature of the U.S. right now. What are we expecting to emerge from this meeting today? Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, there's an economic summit in Toronto. That's what I'm referring to. So it involves members of his Council on Canada-U.S. Relations. They're going to focus on diversifying Canada's global trade relationships and breaking down barriers to interprovincial trade. Yesterday, we were reporting that Anita Anand suggested that we could be actually completely breaking down interprovincial trade barriers. Do you think anything practical is going to come out of this? Or maybe I should say, does something practical need to come out of this?
I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people looking for action, like, trade barriers and trade diversification, like that. That's such a perennial issue. Like, you can go back in the archives of a newspaper and people are talking about that for like years, if not, decades. But we're still, especially with trade diversification, like, the stats that I've seen, like 77% of our exports went to the States in 2023. Like, we're so reliant on the juggernaut to the south. Despite having free trade deals with Europe, South Korea, other countries being involved in like trading blocks and stuff. So it's definitely something they've been trying to do for a long time. Interprovincial trade barriers, the same thing. So it'll be very interesting to see, maybe especially on the trade barriers, given that might be something that could happen maybe faster if there's some sort of agreement or something. But no, I expect a lot of talk around that. And then a lot of talk as well around, which was sort of their playbook with Trump 1.0 in his first term, enlisting the private sector, getting union leaders, trying to convince people in the States to start saying the same thing, that, these tariffs would hurt both sides of the border. Please don't do this, Donald Trump. I expect we'll hear a lot of talk around trying to build that vocal coalition of people who agree with the Canadian position on this, and especially in the States, and get them singing from that songbook as well.
All right, Alex, thank you very much for touching the things we'll be watching develop later in the day and being on the morning show. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
That's Alex Ballingal. He's Deputy Auto Bureau Chief with the Toronto Star. We reached him this morning in Ottawa. We're going to hear more about these things on World Report in a moment. Right now, 3 minutes to 7 o'clock, Heather Walls is in with our local Manitoba headlines.
Good morning. Well, criticism of a joke by a candidate to lead Manitoba's PCs. During a speech on Wednesday, Wally Dowdritz joked he would let polar bears loose in downtown Winnipeg to reduce homelessness. Dowdritz says he made it clear he was joking. Thomas Rempel-Ong volunteers at a mission for the homeless and says he saw the speech and didn't find it funny. The party's leadership selection committee has declined comment. Fire crews are forced to use buckets to put out fires at Tatasqueat Cree Nation. The fire chief there says large parts of the town don't have running water for fire hydrants. Some people in the community think the problem lies with the local band council. We'll hear more in our next local news coming up at 7:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
We'll also hear more on that Wally Dowdritz story in the next hour of Information Radio. In addition, at 7:40, a really interesting new investigation by CBC Marketplace might help you determine whether or not when you're shopping, you're really getting a deal. Because sometimes a sale is maybe not a sale. She'll explain. They spent 7 months tracking prices at places like Old Navy and Canadian Tire, for example. So that's ahead. And then right after 7 o'clock for I Love to Read Month, we're going to meet one of the people behind the pages. We're going to talk to an author. We're going to talk to an established author about what it's like to write in 2025 and how that's changed over the years. Right now, 1 minute to 7 o'clock. Brandon School Division, no rural buses due to the weather and road conditions. I should say road conditions. The weather seems to be a little more stable today. In Rolling River School Division, buses are also canceled. Colony schools are also closed for the day there. Minus 14 in Winnipeg. We're mostly cloudy, a high today of minus 11, and with wind chill it'll feel more like minus 23. The winds won't be quite as strong as yesterday. Winds will be northwest at 20, and they'll pick up throughout the morning here a little bit. Right now they're just light, southwest at 8. You can call us if you see any problems on those highways or in the city of Winnipeg on your morning commute. May McKillop will take your calls. 788-3093 is where you can reach us. Stay with our team here at Information Radio. World Report is coming up next on CBC.
Today on The Current.
When people define aesthetics, they're not talking about the 15% body fat guy. I hate to break it to you, but they're not. Social media is filled with posts of men striving to look buff, and increasingly, those men are using steroids to get there. How the push for a certain look is warping the self-image of young men and damaging their health, coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Helen Mann. Canadian politicians, business executives, and labor leaders have a daunting task in front of them. They have to prepare for life after free trade with the United States. Yes, President Donald Trump's tariffs are on hold for now, but the reprieve is too short for Canadian business to feel secure. So stakeholders are convening this morning at an economic summit in Toronto. Lisa Shing has details.
We're doing more than just bracing ourselves.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau preparing the country for the coming weeks, hoping to assure Canadians a meeting in Toronto involving business, trade, and labor leaders can produce results.
To do the vital work of breaking down the barriers that hamper interprovincial trade, trimming unnecessary red tape.
This economic summit, an emergency response to U.S. President Donald Trump's tariff threat on all Canadian imports. On Monday, Trump agreed to pause the levies for a month, but the trade relationship with Canada's biggest partner may never be the same. Entrepreneur Wes Hall will be at the meeting. He's a member of the PM's Council on Canada-U.S. Relations.
Right now, fix our problems internally. Buy Canadian. We talk about interprovincial trade. It's very difficult, even if your product is made in Canada, to get it from British Columbia to Ontario.
Unifor's national president, Lana Payne, will also be in Toronto and says diversifying our economy is key.
That we have to look at other parts of the world, whether it's Europe or other places, to say, okay, let's join forces here.
All good ideas, according to Emily Gilbert, professor in Canadian Studies at the University of Toronto. But there will be challenges.
The environmental costs, I think, if we do undertake trade at much greater distances.
The other consideration is how quickly changes can be implemented, considering the constraints of Trump's deadline. Lisa Shing, CBC News, Toronto.
Anyone hoping to be the next Prime Minister of this country faces a key deadline today. Liberal leadership hopefuls have until 5 p.m. to pay the next installment in their candidacy fee. It's a big chunk, $125,000. As of yesterday, Karina Gould said she had not raised the full amount.
The party set the entry fee for this race very, very high. We've seen that means that there are a number of potential candidates that may have run that didn't, and there are a couple that have already dropped out because of that. My campaign didn't exist when the party set these rules, but we're doing everything that we can to meet it.
Gould is the former House leader. She says she is still confident she will raise enough money on time, but she's also calling out Liberal Party establishment people for keeping others out of the race. The International Criminal Court is promising it will continue to pursue justice, even though U.S. President Donald Trump has just ordered sanctions against staff who work there. Trump signed the executive order late yesterday and accused the ICC of targeting the United States and its close ally Israel. For more, let's go to our correspondent, Sasha Petrusik in Jerusalem. Sasha, what is the reaction to these sanctions?
Well, Trump's accusing the International Criminal Court of illegitimate and baseless actions targeting the U.S. and its close ally Israel, in his words. All of this would place financial and visa restrictions on various people at the court. They have not been named. The court said this is unacceptable, also says that it would continue providing hope and justice to millions of innocent victims of atrocities. Those are its words. And of course, it comes on the heels of the U.S. and Israel pulling out of a couple of other UN agencies. Yesterday, the UN Human Rights Council, and before that, UNRWA, the main agency that helps Palestinian refugees.
Meanwhile, Trump is still pushing ahead with his proposal to take over Gaza.
Yeah, here too, we're seeing a remarkable confluence of policies and interests between Israel and the United States. Israeli politicians have embraced the Trump deal, and even as much of the rest of the world has condemned it as unfair to Palestinians and unworkable. And of course, there's strong resistance in Gaza, but Trump and his officials are continuing. Yesterday, Trump himself doubled down on that proposal without actually answering some key questions, like whether Palestinians would be allowed to go back to Gaza after they were removed under his plan. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio saying that there's a lot of countries in the world that like to criticize the U.S. and express concern about Palestinian people, but very few have stepped up to do anything concrete about it. Really a challenge to anyone else to come up with a better idea. He himself did not answer that key question about whether Palestinians would be allowed to go back. He kind of avoided it.
Sasha, thank you.
My pleasure.
The CBC's Sasha Petrusik in Jerusalem. Another member of the Fayed family is being accused of sexual assault. You may recall the late Mohammed Al-Fayed, who owned London's Harrods department store, has been accused of sex abuse by hundreds of women. Now his brother Ali is facing similar allegations. They come from 3 former Harrods employees. Crystal Gumansingh spoke with one of the women who is Canadian.
When you're feeling mortified and someone's laughing and giggling, and it's a taunting kind of giggle.
Amy says despite years passing, she can still hear Ali Fayed's voice and see his face. At the time, she was 21.
I was taken on the private Harrods jet, completely alone with Mr. Ali.
In a CBC interview, she said her boss, Mohammed Al-Fayed, told her to go to Switzerland to do some administrative work for his youngest brother. But there was no work to be done, and Ali suggested they go to a community pool.
I didn't even get a chance to swim. It was just being grabbed and pulled in and fondled and groped.
CBC has agreed to use her first name only. Amy is a part of the group Justice for Harrods Survivors, which is pursuing civil legal action against the department store. She previously went public about being assaulted by Mohammed Al-Fayed. The allegations against Ali Fayed by 3 women, including Amy, have not been tested in court. They have been detailed in a new BBC investigation.
Mohammed Al-Fayed's only surviving brother has been accused of sexual assault by...
In a statement to the BBC, a spokesperson for Ali Fayed, who lives in the U.S., said the businessman will not be scapegoated and that he unequivocally denies any and all of the allegations of wrongdoing and that the incidents simply never took place. Crystal Gumansingh, CBC News, London.
A library in Alberta is facing a pushback from parents who want some titles pulled from the shelves, specifically those with themes on sex education and gender identity. Such book challenges are on the rise in Canada. An investigation by the Fifth Estate reveals a shadow war on libraries. Mark Kelly has more.
It's called Pride Festivals, and it just teaches kids about Pride Festival. And
librarian Kelly Lawson pulls a book from a shelf at the Airdrie Public Library north of Calgary. It's being challenged by parents who want it removed.
So this one, along with quite a few other titles we've had, were found actually in our toilet in the women's washroom.
The Airdrie Library, like many others in Canada, finds itself caught in the crosshairs of a culture war. Under fire? Books about sex education, gender identity, or titles with gay themes and characters. Lawson tracks book challenges for the Canadian Federation of Library Associations. In 2023, there were almost 200, up from 38, for example, in 2018.
Who here feels that horrible things are happening in our library?
David Parker is the founder of Take Back Alberta. It's one of many socially conservative groups who feel some library content is corrupting Canadian kids.
Right, they're introducing them to a sexual way of being. They're making sex primary. Children don't need that. Children need to be children.
Florence Ashley is a transgender associate professor of law at the University of Alberta.
It's really kind of a first step towards a broader redefinition of who is truly part of Canada.
As for those defaced books in Airdrie?
All these books that got thrown in the toilet, we reordered. So we'll bring them back for people.
Mark Kelly, CBC News, Airdrie, Alberta.
The Fifth Estate's full investigation airs tonight on CBC Television and CBC Gem at 9:30 in Newfoundland. Watch it on YouTube this afternoon at 1 p.m. Eastern.
That is the latest from World Report. If you spent part of your weekend with us, you probably already know listening to World Report is the easiest way to stay on top of the news on busy days. But we need help getting the word out. So you can help us by hitting the following button on your preferred podcast app. That's the follow button. I'm Helen Mann. This is CBC News.
Well, welcome to Friday morning, everyone. I'm Marcy Marcusa. We're live in downtown Winnipeg. We're at minus 14, and that is very similar to where we were yesterday at this time. Thanks for joining us on CBC's Information Radio. This is your morning show. We've got a couple of cancellations here of buses in rural Manitoba, so we'll announce those right around the weather in a couple of minutes here. Plus, this hour on the program, we have a story coming up at 7:50 about some remarks that were made, a disparaging remark about people experiencing homelessness from a Manitoba PC leadership candidate. It has one party member questioning his ability to lead the Progressive Conservatives in this province. We're going to hear what happened and how the story unfolded coming up at 10 to 8 with some detail. In addition, this hour on the program, for I Love to Read Month, we're meeting one of the people behind the pages, an author. We'll talk to an established author about what it's like to write in 2025 and how it's evolved over the years. Right now to Heather with more headlines.
Good morning. Well, Manitoba has more people living in deep poverty than any other province. That is according to a new Stats Canada report looking at data from 2022. Families Minister Nahani Fontaine says Manitoba's former PC government was in power at the time. She says the NDP government has initiated programs like school nutrition and free birth control as ways to help reduce the cycle of poverty. And a disaster assistance coordinator at Mennonite Central Committee is calling for people to donate more to groups like his. This as the Trump administration dismantles and defunds USAID. It distributes tens of billions every year in upwards of 100 countries. We'll hear from Bruce Gunther at MCC, who says 30% of all international aid comes from USAID. Those stories and more coming up at 7:30.
Heather and Abby and May, do you guys want to hear something fun for Friday morning before we get into weather traffic?
Sure.
And
absolutely.
Also, because nothing's major serious, I'm not delaying that. But so I'm playing tonight with the CBC team in this Ironman curling bond spiel, which is a fundraiser for Heart and Stroke on the Red River.
I want to go watch.
There's so many teams involved, so really just awesome. But I just got the list of who we're playing and also the names of the curling teams.
Oh, that's good.
Oh.
Right?
Did they have to change their names after they heard the CBC team name?
What's the CBC's team name?
Okay, so our name is, and this is so cheesy, our name is Stone Cold CBC. But listen to some of these creative names. And this, of course, is the name. There's people behind these names. Maybe you know the teams. Children of the Corn Broom.
Okay.
Do you remember that horror movie, Children of the Corn, where the kids were all strange and they walked out of the corn and looked at you menacingly? I love that. Hack Job. Super smart because you put your foot in a hack, right? On the Rocks. We're playing Broom-pocalypse tonight. Fraggle Rocks, right? Remember Fraggle Rock?
That's going over my head.
Really? Did you watch? Okay, Fraggle Rock was.
I remember it.
You remember? It was like this show with like these really
Jim Henson.
Yeah, kind of like mangy looking puppets with like crazy hair, and it was always on like after school on CBC. I think actually when I would come home.
I see.
Yeah,
I've googled it.
May's googled it. You can see the Fraggles. Yeah, Fraggle Rocks. Sweepy McSweepersons.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, right. City Critters and the Broken Heads. I love that. The Broken Heads. I wonder if they're from Brokenhead. Team Royal Flushers.
Okay.
They don't sound like they have a lot of confidence. And finally, because there's so many here and I love them all, but Broom for Improvement.
Okay.
Nice.
Right? I love sports
that
teams
fun.
name. Fun, hey? Did you curl, Heather? We asked everyone on the team, but I don't know if I asked you. Yeah. You were from, obviously, you grew up in rural Manitoba. So I think it's, maybe I shouldn't say this, but I mean, most rural communities in this province, I mean, curling's big.
Curling was big. Do you know the hometown where I grew up had a beautiful curling rink? And you go there now, and it's kind of in disrepair. I don't think it's as big as it used to be.
Oh, it kind of makes me sad. Well, it'll be fun tonight on the Red River in Winnipeg for the Ironman Curling Bond Spiel. All right, let's talk about rural Manitoba just before we turn to our weather forecast. Because due to poor rural road conditions, Brandon School Division buses aren't running, and in Rolling River School Division buses are all out canceled today. And schools, colony schools, are also closed for today in Rolling River. Abby has the actual temperatures. Abby, what's up?
Yep, we're looking at a cloudy stat across a lot of the regions in the province today. Then we see a mix of sun and clouds with some light snow in the southern regions, while the north will be experiencing still very cold conditions with snow and the wind chill to factor in. But for Winnipeg and the Red River Valley region, we're looking at temperatures around minus 14 at this time. It is cloudy outside. This morning, we do have a very slim chance of light snow in the forecast. Then we see a transition to a mix of sun and clouds. Heads up, the winds will be picking up from the northwest around the noon period. It will get breezy at that time, but then expect a high of minus 11. The wind chill this morning feels like minus 23.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
May, anything on the commute to report?
Nothing big to report. I will say I'm keeping an eye on the Parkland region through Riding Mountain up to Brandon area, where we have some school bus closures today. What I'm seeing mostly is just partly snow-covered conditions and some reduced visibility. Now, the reduced visibility in the southeastern side of the province that I talked about in the last hour is seeming to clear up, but I would love an update in that area. So if anyone is in really anywhere, but I would love an update in some of those closure areas, like along Highway number 10, Brandon, and Rolling River School Division area. But anywhere along your commute, if you're seeing something that you want to pass along, if something's getting in your way, a stalled vehicle, or maybe it's a nice commute, give me a call and let me know. 204-788-3093.
Well, as I mentioned, February is I Love to Read month, but what did it take for your favorite book to get into your hands? As it turns out, writers are faced with a lot of challenges these days. They compete with AI, they're handling social media, and even in some cases, they're editing their own work. But a local author says those challenges also give authors a unique opportunity. Susie Maloney is a renowned horror novelist and screenwriter, and these days a mentor to new authors on the scene. And for I Love to Read month, she's here for a glimpse into an author's life. Good morning, Susie.
Good morning.
Thanks for being with us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
So from the conversations you have with the new authors that you're mentoring, I'm curious what they say their biggest concerns are. What are you mostly talking about?
You know, all writers, regardless of when they start, any new writer, an early question that they ask is, how do I get published? I'm of two minds of that. One thrills me. It's wonderful to know that people with their own understand that they have their own unique voice and that they want to be heard. And the other part of me thinks that doesn't have to be the end result of what you write. We live in such a society now that everything is a hustle. Even something as intimate and personal as writing has to have an end result that you get some money out of. But yeah, that's often an early question that I get, and there's so many ways to do it now, which is great because it developed a community of writers that understand that they can go and get their voice out there and get heard and get read. But on the other hand, it's harder and harder to stand out from that crowd.
What's the biggest thing, if you can name one, that has changed since you would have been coming up?
Oh gosh, the biggest one I think is how books get in your hands. When I was first writing, an agent sold it, a publisher took it on, and once you'd written the book, all you had to do was kind of wait for people to finish with it. So they would hire the editor. They would do the editing, including a substantive edit and then, a line edit and a proofread. You didn't have to do any of those things. And then once they would create the book, literally physically create a book. And then they would have people who would sell it, who would get it out into the media, who would, send it to all the beta readers and get some buzz going on it. Publishers don't really do much of that anymore. They absolutely produce your physical copy, but the hype is pretty much left to the authors. Unless you're a celebrity or a sports star or, writing a nonfiction book, you're left to your own devices. Writers literally now have to become social media experts. in order to get their books out into the world.
I mentioned, AI is something obviously a lot of authors, in some cases, are struggling to compete against right now. What are your biggest concerns about that, and do you see any opportunities with AI for authors?
Well, I mean, at some point we're going to have to see the advantages of it, and there are some, I suppose. One thing, AI isn't a thing. It's a it's a garbage in, garbage out, good stuff in, good stuff out. It's a tool. It's a sad tool because what it's done is it's gotten all of its training from existing authors. So, human beings have created the work that AI then studied, and now AI can do. But one thing it can do that we don't talk about because we don't want to talk about AI, is it can produce an outline. So if you have an idea for a story and, you want to follow the 3-act structure and you want there to be a midpoint, of course I'm talking about screenplays now, but if you want to do that and you punch in a bunch of information into AI, you will get an outline of a story, which you can then, spruce up or discard completely. We don't do that because it's a slippery slope. If you start using AI that way, I think it's probably quite easy to use it in the next level. Well, can you write me the first chapter? Can you, can you create this character for me? It's going to get better and better and better, and we're going to have to figure out how we use it and how we control it. Because right now it's not very good, but it's still studying. Making it sound like a monster, but it's true.
I want to ask you about some of the challenges of 2025 in writing that could also bring some unique opportunities, because I understand that you do believe that there is a more diverse network of voices, if you will, that might get the ear of publishers. Is that right?
Yes. So one of the beautiful things that has come out of the massive changes to writing in the last 25 years is that people who were struggling to get heard, 20 years ago, now can produce and publish their own work, or find niche publishers that are interested in publishing their work. What's beautiful is what was hard to get a hold of, let's say a marginalized writing group, let's say, trans horror, queer horror. Now there's markets that have found the readers of these kinds of books, and so you can find the kinds of books you want to read. And it's not just, I have to read these mysteries by V.C. Andrews anymore. You can find exactly the kind of, sports stories about animals. You can find anything that you want to read is probably out there somewhere. You just have to search for it a bit.
Before you go this morning, anything that you have coming out soon that we should be on the lookout for?
Funny, I had shifted almost all the way into film and television, and now I'm shifting back. I'm writing a new book. In a year or so, 2 years, I'll have a book out there. But most recently, I wrote a story. I was part of the 10 writers who wrote an Anne of Green Gables story for the anthology. Fantastic writers across Canada. We all got to take Anne and put our own spin on it.
Well, that's
so
fun.
There's cyberpunk, there's a queer Anne, there's a male Anne. I stuck to my lane and wrote a horror story.
What's it called? Does it have a title yet?
It's called, my story's called The Anne and the Bloody Book. There's so much fun. I encourage everyone to go and find a copy of the anthology. Bookstores near you.
Susie, thanks very much for the conversation for I Love to Read Month. Appreciate having you on today.
Thank you so much.
That is Susie Maloney, author and screenwriter. 7:24 a.m. is the time right now on 89.3 FM, 990 a.m. on the app and YouTube. -14, mostly cloudy in Winnipeg. And during that interview, Heather Wells came in and updated our list of issues out there in terms of buses not moving. So we've been telling you Brandon School Division isn't having rural buses today, Rolling River buses canceled, Colony schools closed, and now Mountain View School Division is the newest one on the list. So Mountain View School Division buses are canceled because of poor rural road conditions as well, and extensive snow, they say, snow drifts all throughout the division. So Mountain View. Take it easy if you're traveling out there. Let us know what you're seeing if you are out and about in that part of Manitoba or anywhere else. On the commuter line, it's 788-3093. Well, it's time for morning sports at 7:25. Scott Regier joins us now. Hello to you.
Hey there, Marcy.
So the Jets are playing their final game tonight before a long layoff. What are you going to be watching?
Well, to see whether they can finish strong before they take an extended hiatus, Marcy, for the Four Nations Cup tournament. Heading into this evening's matchup with the visiting Islanders, things could scarcely be going better. Winnipeg atop the Western Conference and just behind Washington for first place overall in the league, only because of winning percentage. It is the kind of momentum, obviously, you would hate to see lost, but with a 2-week break, it's definitely a possibility. Head coach Scott Arniel was asked what he'll be doing.
I'll be in the office every day. No, just kidding. I'm going to turn my brain off. I'll watch those from afar, but get some time away and just everybody. It's important that we all reset, and then the race is on. And there's a lot of teams still vying for playoff spot, jockeying for spots in your division, those wild cards. So it'll be a sprint.
A sprint comprised of 26 remaining regular season games. So let's just hope the likes of Connor Hellebuck, Kyle Connor, and Josh Morrissey, who will all be playing in this Four Nations Cup tournament, that they stay healthy, Marcy, and are ready to pick up where they left off down the stretch. History, where these circumstances are concerned, isn't particularly kind. The last mid-season break NHLers took was during the Sochi Olympics, and that year, the teams who were atop the league standings heading into the break, the likes of St. Louis, Anaheim, Chicago, none of them did particularly well upon resumption. None of them went very far in the playoffs. So not too many pina coladas on the beach, boys.
Let's stay with hockey here. How'd things go for Canada last night in this rivalry series that you were talking about yesterday?
Well, not the way they'd hoped, Marcy. A narrow loss to the U.S., which means the series, which serves as preparation for next year's Olympics, of course, is tied at 2 games apiece now. There were positives in Halifax, though, including Nova Scotia native Blair Turnbull scoring her first national team goal in her first province.
Yeah, it felt great. Obviously not the outcome that we wanted. We would have liked to close out the series tonight, but anytime you get to score, it's really, really special, and for my family to be here for that one, it meant a lot. The crowd was awesome all game, so I know the crowd in PEI will be great too, and we're excited to head over to the island.
The deciding game in the series goes in Summerside, PEI tomorrow, where the hope will be it is an equally well-behaved crowd. Some were concerned, Marcy, in Halifax last night, that there could be booing of the American national anthem, as we've seen of late in the aftermath of the U.S. threatening those trade tariffs. But unlike what we heard in Vancouver, Calgary, Ottawa, and Toronto, there was no jeering of the Star-Spangled Banner last night in Halifax.
And besides watching, trying to get your eyes on American commercials, what else are you focusing on Sunday for the Super Bowl?
Well, on the field, Marcy, whether Kansas City can become the first team to ever win the big game 3 years running. Many believed in a salary cap era that when the Tom Brady-led Patriots won their last Super Bowl, we'd never see a dynasty like this again. Well, if Patrick Mahomes leads KC to another title on Sunday, it'll be proof that theory was wrong. Meanwhile, no shortage of things to watch for around the game, and not just Taylor Swift. Donald Trump will attend, making him the first sitting president to be at a Super Bowl. And I wonder what he'll make of the end zones on Sunday. Instead of the End Racism slogan that was supposed to be written at each end of the Superdome's field, the words "Choose Love" will be emblazoned instead. The NFL says this is not a slight on diversity initiatives, but rather a message meant to address the recent tragedies south of the border, ranging from the California wildfires to the truck attack in New Orleans. So lots to take in beyond just football, Marcy, those commercials you mentioned. Mm-hmm. And purple, by the way, that is the color of Gatorade, considered the favorite to be poured on the winning coach's head.
Have you seen the commercial with Catherine O'Hara and Willem Dafoe where they're
No.
Okay, so they're like at a resort and they just say something like, they look at a younger couple and they say, so do you want a tennis match with us, kind of thing? And then the younger couple's like, yeah, sure. And then they like kick their butts and they're like smashing the tennis and they're really good at it. And then it's kind of like their gig and they have all this slow-mo of them walking like they're super cool. And the whole thing is so funny because Catherine O'Hara, everything she does is so funny to me. But you got to look that one up. It's just hilarious.
I'd forgotten about Willem Dafoe, too.
Right? Yeah, they game all these people.
Yeah.
Oh, it's really, really fun.
I'll check it out.
All right. In between the football game.
Somewhere in there, yeah.
Take care. We'll talk to you Monday.
Okay.
That's Scott Reguera with Morning Sports here on CBC. Well, coming up after 7:30, more on that marketplace investigation by CBC you might have heard a little bit about. When is a sale not really a sale? They spent 7 months tracking prices on different products from Canadian Tire and Old Navy, just as two stores, for example. We'll find out what they found right after your CBC Winnipeg News. This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it is minus 14. We are warming up to minus 11 today, still shy of the seasonal high of minus 9. Mix of sun and clouds as well by this afternoon. A joke by a candidate to lead Manitoba's Progressive Conservatives is falling flat. Wally Dowdrich runs a Churchill eco-tourism company. During a speech this week, he joked he would let polar bears loose in downtown Winnipeg to reduce homelessness. Speaking to party members on Wednesday in Winnipeg, Dowdrich noted, here there are no homeless people in his town of Churchill.
When there are serious repercussions for a bad lifestyle, people smarten up very quickly. So my plan is to import 10 polar bears, then let them go in front of the ledge.
Dowdrich says he made it clear he was joking and says homelessness stems from addictions. A PC member who volunteers at a mission for the homeless says he saw the speech and didn't find it funny. Thomas Rempel-Ong says he wishes people would think before they speak. The party's leadership selection committee declined comment. You can hear more on this story coming up in the next half hour right here on Information Radio. Manitoba has more people experiencing deep poverty than any other province. That is according to a new Statistics Canada report looking at data from 2022. StatsCan says deep poverty is when people reach less than 75% of the basic standard of living. Families Minister Nahani Fontaine says Manitoba's poor showing is the fault of the former PC government in power at the time. She says the Progressive Conservatives cut many programs and services like rent assistance.
Rent assistance is a really good program to ensure that folks that need a little bit of extra support are provided that financial support to ensure that they don't become at risk for homelessness.
Fontaine says the NDP government has initiated programs like school nutrition and free birth control as ways to help reverse the cycle of poverty. A Canadian economic summit is being held today in Toronto.
We talk about interprovincial trade. It's very difficult, even if your product is made in Canada, to get it from British Columbia to Ontario.
Wes Hall, a member of the Prime Minister's Council on Canada-U.S. Relations, he will be at the table today along with the Prime Minister and dozens of representatives from Canadian business and Canadian labor. It's a summit born out of the lingering U.S. tariff threats, and its main goal, among a number of priorities, is looking at opening up Canadian markets for Canadian manufacturers concerned about the future of trade with the United States. You can hear more national and international news coming up on World Report at 8. Fire crews are forced to use buckets to put out fires in Tatasqueyak Cree Nation. The fire chief there says large parts of the town don't have running water for fire hydrants. Some people in the community think the problem lies with the local band council. Douglas Kitchakisik is the community's fire chief.
Oh, they haven't had meetings yet. Been neglecting to have inform the people of their meeting, their plans, and whatever they plan, and people are frustrated because of that. They're neglecting to inform people. They're not having band meetings.
Chief Doreen Spence says band meetings have been canceled because of deaths in the community. She says they are working with the federal government to build and secure funding for new water infrastructure. A Congolese Winnipegger worries about conflict raging in his home country. The United Nations estimates at least 2,800 people died during fighting in Goma last week. Rwandan-backed M23 rebels captured the city in a major escalation of a decades-long conflict. Paul Kambaja moved to Winnipeg in 2003 as an immigrant and is a teacher here. He has many friends and family who have been displaced.
I'm feeling very sad. We are like every Congolese. The war in Congo has been going on for over 30 years with a lot of loss, people dying over 6 or 10 millions and a lot of women, displacement.
Kambaja says the food is being controlled by the rebels who use it to create starvation. And the dismantling of the world's biggest funder of international aid is sending shockwaves around the globe, including here in Manitoba. The Trump administration is in the process of defunding USAID. It distributes tens of billions of dollars each year in upwards of 100 countries. Bruce Gunther coordinates disaster response for the Mennonite Central Committee. His organization doesn't get USAID funding, but works with many other organizations that do.
30% of all international aid comes from USAID. And so that means, no food or water or shelter for people that are in desperate need when we have many humanitarian crises around the world.
Gunther says there's never been a greater need for people to donate to groups like MCC as they work together to help fill some of the gaps created by the demise of USAID. You can find more Manitoba news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, Heather Wells, thank you.
Thank you.
School bus cancellations. Mountain View School Division buses are canceled because of conditions on the road and snow drifts throughout their division. Also, Brandon School Division, no rural buses. And Rolling River School Division buses are canceled as well. Also, their colony schools are closed for today in Rolling River. Let's get into our regional forecast now. Have a bit of a deeper look around Manitoba with Abby Adiemi.
Yeah, we're looking at a mix of sun and clouds across the province today. Snow possible in some areas, focusing more in the northern part of the province. And Brandon also seeing light snow at this time. The wind chill is also something that you should take into consideration as you start your day. For Winnipeg, we're seeing temperatures around -14. We've been there since the show started with some cloudy conditions. There's a very slim chance of light snow this morning, and once we get into the day, we'll notice a mix of sun and clouds. The winds will be picking up, becoming breezy around the noon period. We do warm up to a high of -11 today. However, the wind chill is going to make it feel like -23 as you step outside. Partly cloudy conditions you'll see tonight with light winds. Similar conditions in the Pembina Valley region, looking at Morden, Winkler, Alton, all the way down to Morris. It's similar to Winnipeg. Temperatures around -15 at this time with a mix of sun and clouds in the forecast. Heading west to Brandon, -16. Light snow falling in that part of the province this morning. Once that tapers off, you should see a mix of sun and clouds. Highs will be around -14. The wind chill makes it feel like -29 this morning. In Dauphin, -14 and cloudy. Light snow in the forecast this morning. That will be followed by a mix of sun and clouds. Highs around -14. The wind chill feels like -35, so frostbite is a thing for folks in Dauphin. Good morning to our friends in Gimli, the Interlake region. Temperatures hovering around -13, -14 at this time with cloudy conditions. Expect a very slim chance of light snow this morning. Once that goes away, you should see a mix of sun and clouds. Winds will be breezy this afternoon. Highs also around -11. The Power, Flin Flon, Thompson, Churchill, temperatures around -23, -24 at this time. Partly cloudy conditions you're seeing in Thompson, clearing the Power. Churchill seeing ice crystals and light snow at this time. The chilly condition is mostly in the northern part of the province where the wind chill is between -35 and -40. Overall, I'll tell you the north is the part of the province experiencing the harsh conditions today.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
May McKillop is in with a quick look at our roads.
Quick look at some highway conditions through highways east of Highway 10. So 45 to Russell area, Highway 16 to St. Lazare, Bensgarth area. We're seeing some snow-covered conditions, windy conditions, causing reduced visibility and some snow drifts in the area. As well, just north along Highway number 10 to Dauphin, we heard about Mountain View School Division having some closures, some bus closures. a lot of blowing snow conditions, partly snow-covered conditions, especially the further north you head through Thompson, Churchill, Pa. As well, just looking at our streets in the city of Winnipeg here, I heard about a stalled vehicle on northbound Lachemodiere at Fermor. The stalled vehicle is blocking the northbound curb lane at the stop line, so stay left to pass. That's all so far. Anything else getting in the way of the commute, give me a call and let me know. 204-788-3093.
All right, thanks, May.
You're welcome.
May McKillop filling in for Corey Funk this morning. Well, next on the show, let's build on what you may have heard a little bit on World Report about, which is Marketplace's latest investigation. When is a sale actually not a sale? A CBC Marketplace investigation went in search of the answer to that question. They tracked prices at Old Navy and at Canadian Tire for months. And what they found out is not so great news for shoppers who are looking to save money. Some of those deals out there are not what they seem. Asha Tomlinson has been looking into this, and we spoke yesterday after the show.
Good morning, Marcy.
So why don't we start with Old Navy? What did you find there?
Yeah, many of us have shopped at this popular clothing retailer. It is well known for its deals. You don't have to look far when you walk into the store to see the sale signs, or online. You check out the promos, anywhere from 20 to 70% off in some cases, and you think, hey, that sounds great. That's a steal. I got to buy. But what we decided to do is order 10 items online, track the prices over 7 months to see just how often these items are on sale. And what do you know? We discovered that all 10 of the clothing items we bought were on sale for more than half of the time we tracked, which begs the question, is it really a sale then if it's on more often than not?
No doubt. I'm glad you're attempting to quantify this, because it's something I think a lot of us have wondered about. Can you give us some specific examples of what you found?
Yeah, the number crunching, right? A pair of black biker shorts were on sale about 60% of the time we checked, including a today-only deal of $14.99. But I have to ask, that today-only price, how long do you think that lasted?
A day?
2 weeks.
Wow. Okay.
Doesn't check out, right? A lady's button-down shirt on sale 80% of the time. Another tactic is the countdown clock online. Tick, 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 gotta buy it quick because it's going to end. Well, when that countdown clock actually ended, we were tracking it and the price dropped even lower. So it went from $19.99 to $15.99. So you can imagine the people who paid $20 are like, well, I could have got it cheaper after. It doesn't make sense. The most dubious deal of all, in our opinion, though, was the men's T-shirt that we bought. It was on sale the entire 7 months that we tracked. We told shoppers about our price check outside of an Old Navy in the Greater Toronto area, and this was their reaction.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's terrible.
So it's not really a sale.
I think it would trick the consumer.
Yeah, you're tricking them into thinking that it's a better deal.
And you definitely would want to buy it more. So I don't know if it's fair, but I definitely know it's like a psychological trick.
And there are so many frustrated shoppers, enough that it has this class action lawyer in Vancouver. He's filed a suit now against Old Navy alleging misleading sales practices. It has yet to be certified. As for whether retailers are breaking the rules, well, the Competition Bureau does have advertising rules, right, to ensure companies aren't misleading consumers. When we reached out, they said they needed to do some further investigating to determine if rules were breached here. They say if you have a concern, though, file a complaint online to the Bureau. Old Navy, their parent company, Gap Inc., we shared our findings with them, and their response was only no comment.
We're switching gears now, though, to your second price tracking investigation, because we also mentioned that you looked at Canadian Tire.
Yeah. And, there's a lot of hype around Black Friday, Cyber Monday, Boxing Day. Don't know if you were out on those days or online for those days, but you do think you're going to get the best deals. Mm-hmm. We monitored prices on 20 products online, 7 months, and there are some of the best deals, yes, to be had on those days, but more than half were the same discounted price, or you could find stuff cheaper earlier in the year. Take, for example, a blender and a juicer, separate items, both on sale Boxing Day, both $20 cheaper Cyber Monday. Plus, you could get around that price in August and November, respectively. Another glaring example, an espresso machine. Cyber Monday, it was $699.99, $50 cheaper, though, earlier in the year in July. So takeaway is, okay, maybe you don't have to wait. Maybe you can sort of hedge your bets and see what you can get, throughout a year. In a statement, though, Canadian Tire says they're always looking to deliver value and great deals for customers, and that they tell us their weekly promotions. So their flyers, for example, they do say whether or not the lowest price of the season or year is being offered.
It's also interesting because a sale used to be a sale. Boxing Day used to be really special. Like back in the day, if we'd done this, I think we'd have such different findings. And your point about sales, like when they say the sale's on till this time, you presume then the price will go up. It's just fascinating that, hey, it just means there might be a deeper sale afterward, right?
And you also question the value of the item. I mean, if it is being sold at that price the entire time, then what is the actual price? What are you really buying?
So what are some of the solutions here then? Like how can shoppers know exactly what they're getting?
Well, right now the onus is on us, which is unfortunate, but there is a solution that was adopted in the EU, a rule that requires a retailer to show the lowest posted sale price for the item over the last 30 days. So that would help shoppers, and it is helping shoppers, know spot on, okay, is this a real deal or not? Am I actually getting some savings here? Some other tips, easier said than done. Don't rush, think about it. Do you really want it? Do you really need it? And then question, okay, even if you are getting a sale, how good is it? Buy it now or wait. But price tracking always helps. It is a lot of work. It can be, especially if you do it like us over 7 months. But check and see what the price is throughout. And that'll allow you to know whether you're saving money when it's on sale, There is a site called tirespy.ca. We have a Canadian featured in our piece. He took matters into his own hands for the good of his shopping experience and others. And so he has hundreds of products mapped out there. You just have to search it and you can find out when the best price is throughout the years. It's really great stuff.
Thanks for this really great stuff this morning, Asha. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
It's Asha Tomlinson, host with CBC's Marketplace. We spoke yesterday about their investigation. If you want to watch the full investigation, you have to tune into CBC Television tonight. Their show's called Sale or Fail. It's at 8 o'clock on CBC TV and CBC Gem. Time right now is 7:46 a.m. I'm Marcy Marcusa with May McKillop and Abby Adiemi and Kevin Ipatebo, all in our control room on our team today. Heather Wells and Megan Ketchison in our news center with Aaron Broman. We'll hear from Heather and developing headlines coming up. I want to talk about something coming up after 8 o'clock on the show. We've got a really strong conversation that I'm hoping you can stick around and hear. An outlet for young people to talk about their mental health in our community and help other people has been established in Winnipeg. Huddle South Central now has its own podcast for exactly that reason. We're going to talk to the producer and one of the young people who took part in it. So stay tuned. That is coming up after 8 o'clock right here on Information Radio. Right now, though, a tune from Montreal's Half Moon Run for all the times, there's lots of them, that the world feels about to overwhelm you. This is called Back on the Road on CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube.
I'm getting into some things that I can't quite work out. It's like I'm a lone passenger on a 20-ton ship that's run aground. And if that's the way I'm gonna characterize it, I better get myself back on the road. I better get myself back on the road. I get to talking sometimes about things that I can't quite explain. I beat the morning traffic to my basement just to taste the feeling on a page away. And if that's the thing I'll be remembered by, I better get myself back on the road. I better get myself back on the road. Back to work, baby, back in the fold. That's the way Maybe it's the shivers in bed or a headache instead. Maybe the body is a lawyer for the spirit in the court of your head. And if that's the way I'm gonna characterize it, well, I better get myself back on the road. They say the air is cleaner out there on the coast. Back to work, baby, back in the fold. I just arrived, but I got to go.
Lovely little tune there, huh? Half Moon Run and Back on the Road on CBC on your Friday morning. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thanks for joining us here on the show. Well, next, let's return to a story that you may have heard a bit about on the news today. Manitoba Progressive Conservative leadership candidate Wally Dowdrich is facing criticism this morning. Earlier this week, while speaking at a PC leadership event, Dowdrich said this.
Now we have a homeless crisis here in Winnipeg. I always say where I come from in Churchill, we don't have any homeless people. Anybody take a guess why? It's very funny when it's when there's serious repercussions for a bad lifestyle, people smarten up very quickly. So my plan is to import 10 polar bears, then let them go in front of the ledge, live in there, and let them have enter.
Quote, serious repercussions for a bad lifestyle, end quote. So those comments you heard come weeks after Dowdrich was called on already to apologize for sharing a social media post calling his leadership rival, quote, Muslim Abi Khan, end quote. The post said Khan needed to be stopped from becoming the party leader. CBC's Bartley Kiva spoke to Dowdrich about the polar bear remark. Here's that conversation.
That was a joke, correct?
Absolutely, yeah. And it was said as a joke very clearly. And I even afterwards iterated that, of course I'm joking.
Okay, I figured that. But the one thing in there that seemed to me a serious comment, and this is what I want to actually ask about, is you had said that in Churchill there are no homeless people because there are serious repercussions for that lifestyle. So I guess my question is do you consider homelessness to be a lifestyle?
No, homelessness largely is a result of drug addiction. And we need to deal with the drug addiction issue in Manitoba, especially in Winnipeg.
Okay, so it's not like, okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
Alrighty.
no, I love as a Christian, I love people, I love everybody, and I as that pro-life type of person, that attitude dictates the value that I put on people everywhere, including the homeless people.
Would you have any concern if somebody heard that joke and thought, okay, well, this might be a little mean?
When I said it, I do understand that there might be somebody who might take it that way, and I know that there was one person from the other campaign that was present. So I don't feel like I try to style my speech or my exact words to be 100%. Locked, solid, tight, that I can never be criticized. If people want to criticize me on that, they have to understand. Obviously, nobody's going to be moving polar bears around.
That is Manitoba PC leadership candidate Wally Dowdrich in conversation with CBC's Bartley Kiva. Manitoba PC member Thomas Rempel-Ong is concerned about Dowdrich's comments. He also spoke to Bartley.
Honestly, when I heard it, I had to think to myself, I'm assuming this is just a really, really badly thought out joke, because I don't know anyone who would seriously think that a solution to poverty is to unleash polar bears.
He also said, though, in that statement, because I listened to the transcript, I mean, obviously he was joking, there was laughter, but he also said when there are repercussions, people with that lifestyle, that tends to take care of itself pretty quickly. The suggestion being that homelessness is a lifestyle.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously from my own standpoint, volunteering at an organization that works with people who are struggling with that, it's not as simple as saying they chose to be like this. Sometimes it's someone lost their job or they're struggling with an addiction, and it's not that they chose to live it rough.
Now, I spoke to Wally Dowdrich today, and he said, yes, it was a joke. I asked him about the repercussions line, and he said, no, I care about people. I'm a Christian, and it's that addictions cause homelessness. He also stated that, he's not always that polished, and said that jokes sometimes, they sometimes rub people the wrong way. Do you have any concerns about the candidate's remarks, even with the context that he provided a day later when I asked him about it?
As much as you'd like to think, obviously different people have different senses of humor, considering joking that we can solve homelessness with polar bears, I don't know anyone who possibly thinks that that's funny, because you're basically joking that homeless people can be bear food. Like that's not a joke. And I guess the difficulty is, well, if this is how he's speaking, directly to a friendly audience of party members, well, what's the rhetoric that's serious versus a joke? Obviously, when you're running to be leader of a political party, you're supposed to be taken seriously, but with an event like this, do we just kind of assume he's always joking, or it's a bit of a struggle?
Are we simply seeing the goalposts move? We have a U.S. president in the South that makes statements all the time that can ruffle some people's feathers. I'm not suggesting that Mr. Dowdrich is Mr. Trump, but is it just the era of politeness, is that over now, do you think?
I don't think it's across the board, but if the defense was that, well, it was just a bad joke, well, maybe there was a time when we thought through before we actually spoke. And yes, we know that Trump is going to probably say something every single day. That doesn't mean that you can just say whatever you want without consequences.
Does Mr. Dowdrich's comments yesterday, will that affect the way you intend to vote this spring?
I mean, it's definitely going to be a factor, because at the end of the day, I would like to think that if you're speaking to people directly, that's what you honestly think, as opposed to when a reporter talks to you, the day afterwards. Of course, you're going to be saying something a little different. So ultimately, I have to decide, do I vote for someone as leader who jokes about using polar bears to reduce the homeless population? For me, a polar bear is something, my family goes to see at the zoo, or, maybe someday we go to Churchill to see them in person. But the thought that someone thinks I'll joke about using polar bears as a poverty patrol, I didn't expect that would come up.
That's CBC's Bartley Kiva speaking to Manitoba PC Party member Thomas Rempel-Ong. And of course, we know from our reporting there's many reasons that people live homeless and houseless. One of them can be addiction, but one of them is mental health. There's lots of access to affordable housing, and that's a major growing challenge in Winnipeg. With our recent reporting out of the Salvation Army, they talked about seeing more people that couldn't access affordable housing, and they would in fact be living in shelter or staying with them in shelter, but then they'd be going to jobs during the day, of course, and an increase in the rise of the working poor. So that is obviously the interview that Bartley had with Thomas Rempel-Ong there, PC Party member, and then before him reacting to comments from Wally Dowdrich, who is running to be the PC leadership candidate. If you want to read more about the story, you can go to our website at cbc.ca/Manitoba. Let's go now to Heather Wells, who's in our news center with other stories and updates. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, Manitoba has more people experiencing deep poverty than any other province. That's according to a new Stats Canada report looking at data from 2022. Families Minister Nahanni Fontaine says Manitoba's former PC government was in power at the time. She says the NDP government has initiated programs like school nutrition and free birth control as ways to help reverse the cycle of poverty. And some encouraging news just in this morning on the economy. Stats Canada says 76,000 jobs were added to the economy across the country last month. 3 provinces leading the way in job growth: Ontario, BC, New Brunswick. Elsewhere, including Manitoba, little change in unemployment. You can hear more on this story coming up on World Report, and we'll have more for you as well coming up at 8:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
In our situation with school buses, Mountain View School Division has buses canceled because of poor rural road conditions. Brandon not running rural buses, and Rolling River buses canceled, and Colony schools closed for the day. Mostly cloudy here in Winnipeg, and minus -14. Going to be a pretty decent wintry day. A high of -11. Wind chill will be around -23, but winds will be northwest at 20 for us here in Winnipeg. Coming up on the program after 8 o'clock, we're going to learn more about a podcast that is out there. The Huddle Central Let's Listen podcast is led by youth in our community. They share their mental health challenges. We're going to meet one of the young people involved in the podcast producer after 8.
Today on Q.
I'm Saroja Quelo, in for Tom Power, Canada's queen of R&B soul, Julie Black, back on tour after almost 17 years. She drops by the Q studio to chat with Tom Power about the moment Whitney Houston changed her life at the age of 7.
I believe the children are future.
Q. This morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app, or wherever you get your podcasts. News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
Social media is filled with posts of men striving to look buff, and increasingly, those men are using steroids to get there. How the push for a certain look is warping the self-image of young men and damaging their health. Coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Helen Mann. Some key Canadian players are gathering today in Toronto to chart a course for economic self-reliance. The Prime Minister is convening a summit of political, business and labour leaders. Their focus, making Canada less dependent on the United States. Janice McGregor is our Parliamentary Bureau reporter. Janice, what can a summit like this accomplish?
Helen, this 30-day reprieve to Trump's tariff threats meant the government didn't need to be launching a retaliatory offense this week, but it's also given it more time to bolster its defenses. Get serious about fundamental economic strategy issues that the Trudeau government's been criticized for letting slip. Putting a couple hundred business, labor, and political leaders in a room with policy experts today for 4 hours, of course, won't fix everything. The government hopes, though, to be seen as facilitating some of the tough conversations that are required right now. Labor leader Lana Payne from Unifor is on the front lines of this, representing auto workers once again fearful of their jobs heading south, realizing they can't count on the free market.
You can't do that anymore. You have to absolutely put planning around what it is we do with our economy and how we can best build good, strong Canadian jobs.
Donald Trump frames economic prosperity as a national security issue. The upside of this is that it could focus Canadians to take a hard look at why they aren't more strategic about doing business with each other instead of relying so much on the Americans.
So the Prime Minister is bringing all of these stakeholders together, but he's not recalling Parliament.
That's right, and opposition parties believe some of these conversations should be taking place in the House of Commons. While much of what the government needs to do in the short term may not require legislation, there are border security measures, economic supports for workers and industries that would eventually require parliamentary approval. Conservatives have not backed off on their vow to force an election as soon as possible, but a caretaker government during an election period has even less ability to respond to Donald Trump than a prorogued parliament.
Janice, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Janice McGregor in Ottawa. The largest U.S. government workers' union is taking the Trump administration to court. They want to reverse the president's dismantling of USAID. The aid agency helps millions of people around the globe. In addition to the humanitarian consequences, critics say it is also a big blow to U.S. foreign policy. Samantha Power is a former U.S. ambassador to the UN and a former head of USAID.
This is devastating, and it is ceding the field as well to the People's Republic of China, to the Russian Federation and other malign actors who would like nothing more than to see the U.S. ground game in American foreign policy, the face of American values, disappear like this.
Since returning to the Oval Office, Donald Trump has suspended all foreign aid and is moving to cut USAID jobs from 10,000 to about 600. The International Criminal Court is promising it will continue to pursue justice, even though U.S. President Donald Trump has just ordered sanctions against staff who work there. Trump signed the executive order late yesterday and accused the ICC of targeting the United States and its close ally, Israel. For more, let's go to our correspondent, Sasha Petrusik in Jerusalem. Sasha, what is the reaction to these sanctions?
Well, Trump's accusing the International Criminal Court of illegitimate and baseless actions targeting the U.S. and its close ally Israel, in his words. All of this would place financial and visa restrictions on various people at the court. They have not been named. The court said this is unacceptable, also says that it would continue providing hope and justice to millions of innocent victims of atrocities. Those are its words. And of course, it comes on the heels of the U.S. and Israel pulling out of a couple of other UN agencies. Yesterday, the UN Human Rights Council, and before that, UNRWA, the main agency that helps Palestinian refugees.
Meanwhile, Trump is still pushing ahead with his proposal to take over Gaza.
Yeah, here too, we're seeing a remarkable confluence of policies and interests between Israel and the United States. Israeli politicians have embraced the Trump deal, and even as much of the rest of the world has condemned it as unfair to Palestinians and unworkable. And of course, there's strong resistance in Gaza, but Trump and his officials are continuing. Yesterday, Trump himself doubled down on that proposal without actually answering some key questions, like whether Palestinians would be allowed to go back to Gaza after they were removed under his plan. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio saying that there's a lot of countries in the world that like to criticize the U.S. and express concern about Palestinian people, but very few have stepped up to do anything concrete about it. Really a challenge to anyone else to come up with a better idea. He himself did not answer that key question about whether Palestinians would be allowed to go back. He kind of avoided it.
Sasha, thank you.
My pleasure.
The CBC's Sasha Petrusik in Jerusalem. Trump also took aim at Iran, imposing sanctions on the country's oil network. The U.S. accuses Iran of using revenue from oil to fund its nuclear program. Earlier this week, Trump promised to put maximum pressure on Tehran. He says the country cannot have nuclear weapons. Iran's foreign ministry condemned the U.S. decision, calling the measures unjustified and a violation of international rules. There is some encouraging news this morning on the economic front. Statistics Canada says 76,000 jobs were added to the economy in January. That pushes the unemployment rate down slightly, 6.6% from 6.7% in December. CBC senior business correspondent Peter Armstrong has more.
This is 2 months in a row now of job market growth that's well above expectations, and it marks 3 straight months of gains in the jobs market after we had seen a pretty solid stretch where the unemployment rate had been rising relentlessly. And over those 3 months, Canada's added like 211,000 jobs. Better still, these January numbers, they were almost entirely private sector jobs. Now, all this matters even more than usual, as so much of the economic conversation in Canada has been focused on the impact of a potential trade war with the United States. And Canada's economy isn't exactly fighting that war from a position of strength. You look at per capita GDP, it's fallen for 6 straight quarters. The unemployment rate had been rising relentlessly. So this is good news, and it does provide at least something of a cushion that allows the economy to deal with all of this uncertainty that's just sloshing around the world right now. Peter Armstrong, CBC News, Toronto.
Finding a good sale always feels great, and popular retailers have long taken notice, offering discounts both online and in store. But a new CBC Marketplace investigation found those deals may not be what they seem. The team tracked prices at Old Navy and The Gap and found many items were on sale more often than not. That's raising questions about whether the so-called deals are real. Asha Tomlinson has more.
Everything was on clearance and on sale, so I hope I got a good deal.
Shoppers are looking for bargains at an Old Navy just outside Toronto.
I found a bunch of good deals, actually.
But we want to know if the deals are really what they seem. We ordered 10 products from Old Navy's website and tracked prices for 7 months to see how often they're on sale. All 10 of the items we bought were on sale more than half the time we checked. That includes a lady's button-down shirt, on sale 80% of the time. And at one point, it was going for $19.99 with a countdown clock. When that ended, the price dropped even lower to $15.99. And we bought a men's t-shirt that never sold for regular price during our price watch.
Retailers should
be fair and accurate in the representations that they make to consumers.
Justin Giovanetti is a class action lawyer based in Vancouver. He's filed a suit against Old Navy.
Gap and Old Navy represent that their products are being sold at a discount, but in reality, we allege that that actually is not a discount price, because that's the price at which these products are always or almost always sold. So consumers are thinking that they're purchasing products that have a lot more value than they actually do.
Giovanetti's case hasn't been proven in court, and his class action still needs to be certified. We shared our findings with Old Navy's parent company, Gap Inc. It declined to comment. Asha Tomlinson, CBC News, Toronto.
You can watch Marketplace on CBC Television and CBC Gem at 8 tonight. That is the latest from World Report. Listening to World Report is the easiest way to stay on top of the news, but we need to get the word out. You can help by hitting the follow button on your preferred podcast app. I'm Helen Mann. This is CBC News.
Well, good morning, everyone. It is Friday, and it's minus 14 and cloudy in Winnipeg on this February 7th. Thank you so much for joining us on CBC. This is Information Radio. My name is Marcy Marcusa, and we're going to get a little bit deeper into the weather in a moment. And then we have an interview this half hour that it's a conversation I had yesterday, actually, and it is really quite something. It has to do with people doing really important work in our community. The conversation around mental health is being steered by young people with the help of a local podcast that has just launched. We're going to hear more about how this By Youth, for Youth podcast is impacting people. That's coming up this half hour. We have a young person who's been involved in sharing her story, and she'll share with us this morning quite bravely about what it's like for her and what her mental health struggles are. And we'll also talk to the producer about how they're empowering more people to come forward. So stay tuned, making real change in our community. Love that. I applaud that. All right, let's get into what's happening with Heather Wells first. She has other news headlines and developing stories. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, a member of the Progressive Conservative Party is critical of a joke by a candidate to lead Manitoba's PCs. During a speech on Wednesday, Wally Dowdrich joked he would let polar bears loose in downtown Winnipeg to reduce homelessness. Thomas Rempel-Ong volunteers at a mission for the homeless and says he saw the speech and did not find it funny. The party's leadership selection committee has declined comment. Fire crews are forced to use buckets to put out fires in Tatasqueyak Cree Nation. The fire chief there says large parts of that town do not have running water for fire hydrants. Some people in Tatasqueyak think the problem lies with the local band council. We'll hear more coming up in our next local news at 8:30.
Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Abby, how's the weather?
Cloudy stats, a slim chance of snow in most of the areas. Breezy conditions developing throughout the day. Highs to be around minus 11 in most of the southern regions. Now, here's something, Marcy. I'm looking at all the temps across board. Most of the regions down south around minus 14 at this time, but Brandon is at minus 16 with that snow still falling there. And the north is going to be noticeably colder compared to Winnipeg with the wind chills around minus 35, 37.
You're now firmly a weather nerd. I can tease you about it. Because you actually, you're excited because all the temperatures are matched up.
No, because, you know, when you check the temps at the airport, it's different. But the airport is even at minus 14 at this time.
Everybody's in sync.
We're like synced. I feel like I like it.
That was a compliment, by the way.
Thank you.
You should be a weather nerd. You do this every day. All right, let's get into what's going on in the commute. May McKillop is here.
A couple of notes about the commute here in the city of Winnipeg. Northbound Lajam-Modier at Fermor. I was talking about a stalled vehicle blocking the northbound curb lane. That has cleared, but there may still be some delays in that area on northbound Lajam-Modier and Fermor. As well, northbound Main at Selkirk. There's a stalled vehicle in the left turning lane turning on to Selkirk. And we're looking at another stalled vehicle on King Edward and Notre Dame. The stalled vehicle is blocking the southbound curb lane, so keep left past and expect southbound delays for that area. Anything else you're seeing getting in your way, give me a call and let me know. 204-788-3093.
Well, up next on CBC, young people are taking charge in sharing their experiences about mental health. Or better said, taking the mic. The Let's Listen podcast is health, and it is by youth and for youth. The episode and for youth. The episode that we're talking about features young people that attend Huddle South Central. That's a safe space for youth to go. Talking about social media, South Central. Good morning.
Good morning.
And Noah Viner Finley is one of the young people who was part of the podcast. Good morning to you.
Hello.
So how did I do in describing? I described the need for this, Omar. But can you do better than I did in terms of why did you guys start this? Where did you see the need for it?
I think you did a fantastic job. I should copyright that. But the need was the youth told us what they needed. The huddles were all bells around what the community wants, what community needs. And when we did the first episode of the Idea Mill, it took us a summer to record one episode. And we just kept recording little bits. We had a group of about 8 youth there. And then they kept telling us, more people said, hey, I want to do it. I want to talk about it. I want to talk about mental health. I want to tell people my stories. I want to hopefully help some people. So that was once they started telling me that, I'm like, okay, well, let's keep this going.
Yeah. What was it like seeing the students open up in the episodes for you?
There's quite a range of the way the youth opened up. Some tell stories that I'm like, we need to put a trigger warning here. And then some are just sharing their experiences and what they want people to hear. It's a release for them when they walk out the booth. Everybody comes out like a little bit like lighter, like I've shared something today and I'm happy I got it off my chest.
When you go in, I bet the feeling is a bit different. So Noah, you were part of some of this podcast. What did it feel like when you were deciding I'm going to share? What was that like for you, first of all?
I think at first it was like a lot nerve-wracking. And then slowly, like, as the episodes kept going, like, my nervous system kind of, like, went down a little bit. And it kind of feels nice to, like, let go of things that I've had bottled up for so long. So I think the podcast is a great outlet for me and other people.
Why for other people? Did you get some feedback as well after you shared? Yeah.
A bunch of my friends, like, when I went to Churchill, a bunch of my friends also did the podcast. And so we would, like, share how we felt about it. And they would also say that they felt like some of their nerves went away too, talking about their mental health experiences.
For sure. What are some of, Omar, the most striking conversations in your view that you've heard so far, been part of?
Some of those striking things, people talk about their events that have happened in their lives, relationships with their family members, and how that's affected them, some generational trauma. Those things are some of those conversations I had put trigger warnings on. I've done a lot of editing. But just to have them be able to do that and come to that and talk about it, especially with counseling being so hard to find. The counselors, the wait list for counseling is very, very long. Right now. So we're in a mental health crisis. Our youth came through COVID with a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression. And if you were 13 at that time when COVID started, like, you had no outlets, you now have the opportunity to come out and share. And yeah, they listen to the episodes.
Yeah.
That's what I'll say, yeah.
Yeah. Is there an average age of people that you're featuring on the episodes just so far? Like, when you think about are people 15? Are they 18? Like, are they 25?
We stick to the huddle mandate of doing 12 to 29.
Yep.
Most of the youth are between, I'd say, 15 to 21.
Yeah.
Most of them that have been on the show so far.
How old are you, Noah?
I'm 18.
You're 18. Okay.
Yeah.
You mentioned Churchill High School. Yeah. Still going there? Still your school?
I finished this past February.
Yeah.
At the beginning, so I'm done now.
I might have seen you react when Omar was talking about youth and the pandemic. And how people were impacted and tying to mental health. Do you relate to that, or is that something that among your age group that people do talk about?
I definitely do relate to it because I was 15 when the pandemic happened.
Yeah. What was the impact on your mental health that maybe you could articulate?
It definitely took a big toll on me because like I couldn't go anywhere. I was just trapped in this bubble, and so it kind of took like a lot for me.
What did you talk about in the podcast when you were on it?
Oh, for me, I don't really think I shared like specific like moments of my life. I think I was just sharing mainly like the general aspect of my mental health.
Mm-hmm.
So,
what is the general aspect of your mental health?
just like day to day, I guess, and
Mm-hmm.
like how like my brain works and how it affects like me and possibly other people too.
Okay.
So,
I don't want to project, but there's anxiety, there's depression, there's all kinds of different things. But there's also what do you mean by how your brain works?
I just lately I've been working with like obviously like cuddle and stuff, but I'm trying to work with other people so I can figure out like a little bit more about how my brain works, because I definitely notice that I'm like a bit different than other people.
In what way? Like, do you go down doom scrolling rabbit holes, or when are trying to articulate a thought, will you be missing steps in between to connect things?
Yeah. Like, I kind of have trouble connecting point A to point B, and so it kind of spikes my anxiety a little bit because I don't know how to get to those points.
Got it.
So,
does that make you nervous? Does that make like an interaction nerve-wracking because you feel like you might come across a certain way?
mm-hmm. I basically almost every single time before I speak to somebody, I have to like run it through my brain first.
Yeah.
And so the reaction that I would get in my brain before talking to people is completely different than how it is when I'm actually talking to somebody.
Would you assume the reaction would be more negative?
Yeah.
And
almost all the time. Yeah.
And would that make you then, what would the impact of that be? Would it be almost not wanting to have the interaction?
Yeah. Most of the time, like most of my like wanting to do things is kind of shut down by my brain and not wanting to do it.
And when you step out and you do have, because it's courage, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's self-confidence, courage, it's understanding your brain, as you said, when you're able to do that and share and be you and engage. You said most times what you've thought the reaction will be is always more negative than what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. How does it make you feel the more you step into that uncertainty and you get back this positive stuff?
I think it feels nice. Like I'm learning to start like being courageous and taking steps to make sure that like I know what will happen. And so I think if I keep just forcing myself to have difficult conversations, then it would definitely make things a lot easier.
What do you mean? What kind of steps do you mean that you can take to kind of...
Like, I guess just doing it instead of just thinking about it. If I just like get to it instead of holding myself back and thinking about it all the time, I think that will definitely help me in the future.
Do you label it as anxiety, or do you? I don't want to throw labels like I said before, but I wonder or do you just sort of take it as something's going on here and I'm not sure what it is?
Yeah, pretty much that. Like I know I do have anxiety, but like it's not like constant.
Mm-hmm.
But it definitely spikes when I think about interacting with people or like doing things where other people can see me or hear me. So,
which I mean, I can't believe that we're sitting here right talking on the radio, because I mean, would you have been able to do this before the podcast, do you think?
Probably not. No.
Wow.
It's
but
crazy
that's really saying something.
She's
That's
a natural
amazing,
leader,
right?
She's a natural leader. She's
Clearly,
outspoken.
yeah.
It's amazing that Noah's able to come out and do this.
Yeah.
I come from a generation where we didn't talk about mental health at all, so you just had to deal with whatever you had to deal with. So the hope is that more young people feel brave enough to talk about what they're going through and share what they're going through with their friends, with each other, and that people start listening to them, because I feel like coming from my generation, we kind of brush things off and we'll tell you like, suck it up, right? But really, we're just not listening. We're just not listening to how hard things are. Things are different. Social media, everything is different for this generation. And my hope is that they continue to share and continue to encourage other people to talk.
Rude question. You ready? How old are you?
Ugh.
You said your generation.
I turned 50 next month.
Okay, I turned 50 last year. I'm with you. So same generation. I get that, right? It's a completely different time now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it is.
I've never been to therapy. I could probably go to therapy. I probably should go to therapy. but we just didn't do it. We didn't talk about it, right?
Yeah.
Whereas this generation, I think they're a little bit more open to maybe trying these things to help themselves.
I just went for my first time in my life. I think I was in my 40s, and it was around something specific that had happened. And it changed everything for me. You're talking about understanding your brain, Noah. Yeah. Thank you both for being here and talking about this. It's such an important thing to happen in our community. Where can people listen?
So you can listen at Huddle, listen.ca. That's our website. We're on all the streaming platforms. We're also in the midst of starting a video version of the podcast. We have a couple of students from Red River College and the University of Manitoba, and they're going to come help us film. And so youth are painting the room. They're getting the space ready. We have all the equipment. So we should be filming the first episode of that this month. And going forward, 6 months from now, I want to get a few episodes ready. We'll start releasing.
Very cool. Thank you so much for what you do.
Thank you.
And thank you for being so open and for sharing with us today, Noah. Nice to meet you.
Thank you for having me.
What a conversation that was. So much in it that's valuable for all of us in our community. Noah Viner-Finley is one of the young people who took part in the Let's Listen podcast and will be taking part moving forward. Omar Clark is the producer of the Let's Listen podcast and the service navigation specialist at Huddle South Central. And you can check them out in community to hear more and maybe to be part of the conversations. Next on the show, a little bit of music from Lady of the Red. Oh, we switched which music we're playing here. So, no, we didn't switch which music we're playing here. Friday, folks. Lady of the Red's a new moniker of Winnipeg singer-songwriter Larissa Music. Her performing name plays homage to the Red River, which she calls home. She's also taking this moment, though, to re-release her first song. So this is with an added twist of an electric guitar. So if you know her music, you'll be able to compare it to the original. From the Lady of the Red, this is Cracked Pepper.
Seen enough, now I find I've a bird's eye view of my life. Thought I better come down, now I know about the crabs in the barrels, snakes with their idols. So I go on, grab another rung, upward moving, set up to stop. I'm a climber and a fast one too fast to get dragged down. Now I see off cuff it's easier to roll my sleeves. Thought I'd better cool off. Now I lay more tinder to burn and jello the flames. So I go on feeling the pit, getting second opens and I don't quit. If I bite off more than is polite, call me sharp tongue, all jaws, I'm getting my slice. Thought I was cooked, now I see I had a bad recipe. Couldn't stand the heat, now I'm older. My big mouth matured, my taste buds are bolder. So I go on, dash of this and night. Can't get to the pepper without a good crack. If I'm testy, honey, I'm free. It's my plate, my life, let me be.
Lady of the Red and Cracked Pepper. She's performing live tonight at Into the Music.
Thought I'd seen enough, now I find I've a bird's eye view of my life.
I want to take a moment here before the news just to thank the people who work hard on all the programs here at CBC Manitoba and our current affairs unit overall. So that's your morning show, the noon show, Up to Speed, the weekend morning show, feeding the websites, the podcasts. So big thanks to our associate producers, Corey Funk, Abby Adiyemi, Kalkaden Mulugeta, Sierra Sanders, Chidi Akuma, May McKillop, Carmen Ponto, Rosanna Hempel with an item for us this week as well, Marshall Hodgins, Dylan Longhurst, Issa Kickson, Chloe Friesen, and Bruce Layden. Our community CA reporters, community reporter is Shanley Vidal and Jim Agapito in unit. Hosts in unit, Nadia Kidwai and Faith Fundal. Producers in unit, Wendy Parker and this week, Donna Carrero. YouTube producers, Travis Peterson and Kevin Ipatebo, as well as Nellie Gonzalez, who's the show's producer overall in current affairs, and Leif Larson, who's the senior producer of audio here at CBC Manitoba. Big thanks to everyone for all of your work this week and each and every week. It is minus 14 as we head into your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, it is minus 14 in Winnipeg. That's where we've been all morning. We're headed to a high today of minus 11 with a mix of sun and clouds. A candidate to lead Manitoba's Progressive Conservatives joked during a speech he would let polar bears loose in downtown Winnipeg to reduce homelessness. A party member who heard that joke this week and volunteers at a homeless mission says it isn't funny. CBC's Bartley Kivas reports.
I always say where I come from in Churchill, we don't have any homeless people. Anybody take a guess one?
That's Wally Dowdrich, a Churchill ecotourism operator who's running for PC leader, speaking at an event in Winnipeg on Wednesday night.
When there are serious repercussions for a bad lifestyle, people smarten up very quickly. So my plan is to import 10 polar bears, then let them go in front of the ledge.
Dowdrich says he was clearly joking. He says he knows homeless people suffer from addictions. Thomas Rempel-Ong, a PC member who volunteers in the kitchen at Silo Mission, says he heard the joke and wishes people thought before they spoke.
I don't know anyone who possibly thinks that that's funny, because you're basically joking that homeless people can be bear food.
Dowdrich is running for PC leader against MLA Abi Khan. The party plans to name a new leader on April 26th. Bartley Kivas, CBC News, Winnipeg.
A summit in Toronto is just getting underway this hour. Canada's Advisory Council on Canada-U.S. Relations meeting in Toronto. And the host, the Prime Minister, just addressing the crowd this hour.
Over the next 30 days, we will demonstrate that even the tiny amount that is Canada's responsibility into the United States is going to reduce even further by working together, not just across our border, but internationally as well, to make sure that there is no reason to move forward with those tariffs 30 days from now. And that is a priority.
Justin Trudeau there talking about the fentanyl going across the border, which is an issue the United States has cited as a reason for the tariffs. This summit's aimed at bolstering the economy in the face of that rapidly changing relationship with the U.S. Representatives from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities and Canadian Manufacturing and Exporters will be there, along with business and labor leaders, urging Canada to look for alternative trading partners and ways to strengthen internal trade. Indigenous leaders are also expected to be at this conference in Toronto. Some encouraging news this morning on the economic front. Statistics Canada says 76,000 jobs were added to the economy last month. That inches the unemployment rate down to 6.6% from 6.7 in December. It's the second straight month we've seen a decline. 3 provinces leading the way in job growth: Ontario, BC, and New Brunswick. Elsewhere, including Manitoba, little change. Manitoba's jobless rate edged down slightly to 6.1% in January. It had been 6.2 in December. Manitoba's Families Minister says the government is working to raise the prospects for people living in deep poverty. A new Statistics Canada report says Nova Scotia had the highest rate of poverty in 2022. Manitoba not far behind. This province leads the nation, though, in what Stats Can calls deep poverty. That's where people reach less than 75% of the basic standard of living. Nahani Fontaine says Manitoba's demographics played a role.
There is a racialized poverty as well. And so we do have a significant Indigenous population and a significant newcomer population that are facing additional barriers. Tragically, the result is just being further entrenched in poverty.
Fontaine points to things like school nutrition programs and free birth control as initiatives the government hopes will help reverse the cycle of poverty. A Manitoba-based humanitarian organization knows it could soon face greater demands as the Trump administration takes steps to defund the world's biggest provider of international aid. USAID distributes tens of billions of dollars a year in upwards of 100 countries. Mennonite Central Committee doesn't get USAID funding, but its disaster response coordinator, Bruce Gunther, says it does work with many groups that do.
We're hearing from our partner organizations that those large funding operations are being shut down, and so that means there's going to be a huge gap that needs to be filled, and then that will mean more requests coming to us that we'll need to consider how we respond to those.
Gunther says there's never been a greater need for people to donate to groups like MCC as they work together to help fill some of the gaps created by the demise of USAID. Fire crews in a small First Nation in northern Manitoba are using buckets to put out fires. The community doesn't have a functioning fire engine or fire hydrants in Tatasqueyak Cree Nation. That's because there's no running water in large swaths of the town. Melvin Cook Jr. is a fire chief at Tatasqueyak.
We have a fire hydrant in a certain area. It could cover maybe at least 12 homes in that area, maybe more. It depends on how close the fire hydrant is.
Cook says fire hydrants that do exist haven't been maintained in more than 40 years. Tatasqueyak's chief, Doreen Spence, says they are working with the federal government for new water infrastructure. You can find more news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, have a great weekend, Heather Wells.
Thank you. You too.
With a last look at what's happening on our morning commute, which has been very quiet this morning. I'm not sure if May McKillop's going to have much to say. What's up?
Just a couple of stalled vehicles, one on northbound Main at Selkirk. You're that's in the left turning lane. And just an update about the King Edward and Notre Dame stalled vehicle that was getting in the way. That has cleared.
All right. Thanks, May.
You're welcome.
Abby.
Mostly cloudy skies across the province today with a slim chance of, snow in some areas. Breezy through the noon period, and temperatures will warm up to -11 down south, and we should see that wind chill feel colder the northern part of the province.
Thank you, Abby Adiemi. Have a good weekend.
You too.
I will. Starting tonight on the Red River. We'll see you there. CBC has a team in the fundraiser for the Heart and Stroke Foundation, the Ironman Curling Bonspiel. Maybe you do as well. So we'll see you tonight down there at 6 o'clock. Take care. Be well. The Current's coming up next.